This is as full as the zoning hearing was.
Good evening. I now call to order this special meeting of Lancaster City Council. A few reminders before we get started. This meeting and its participants are being recorded and live streamed, so please take a moment to silence your devices and cell phones if you have not done so already. Tonight is a special meeting of council. There will be a general public comment period, but just so members of the community are aware that this public comment period is for items that are not on tonight's agenda. We will first hear comments from residents who have registered in advance, and then open it up to anybody who would like to make comments on items that are not on tonight's agenda. All speakers must begin with their name and block of residence for the meeting record, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. To keep time during the public comment period, we will be using this light that will turn green when time begins, yellow when you have 1 minute remaining, and it'll flash red when your 3 minutes has been exhausted. We thank everybody for keeping equal time for all who would like to make comments, and for all those who are willing and able, please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harris, will you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Mr. President. Ms. Gastineau.
Here.
Ms. Holland-Jones.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch. Ms. Majan.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Sosfus.
Here.
And President Met.
Here. Vice President Hirsch is excused from this evening's meeting. That brings us to public comment. Once again, this is for the items that are not on our agenda. Mr. Harris, do we have any pre-registered comment for this evening?
We do not have any pre-registered for items that are not on the agenda.
Thank you. And do we have any public comment on items that are not on the agenda? Hearing none, we will close the public comment period. And that brings us to our public hearing under the Municipal Planning Code. We do have Neil Albert, who will be conducting the meeting and is the council representing the city. I will turn it over to Mr. Albert at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Albert. I'm a special counsel for the city, and my role here tonight is to represent council as an aid in conducting this hearing. The city is considering passing an ordinance, and that ordinance is a zoning ordinance amendment under the municipality's planning code, and the code requires that we hold a public hearing. The hearing will consist of, first of all, some comments from city staff explaining the proposal for the benefit of all of you. Then there will be a period for council to ask questions, and then it will be opened up to public comment. And I will tell you this now, is that the 3-minute rule for non-agenda items does not apply in a zoning hearing of this nature. You may speak more than 3 minutes. That being said, there's a lot of people here who want to be heard, and out of courtesy to council and to the people waiting to be heard, if you could keep your remarks as succinct as possible, I think we would all appreciate that. Following the conclusion of public comment, the public hearing on the municipality's planning code side of this will be closed, and this will be turned back over to council for such action as it wishes to take. Okay, with that being said, I believe the city has 2 witnesses. I would ask you to identify yourselves and be sworn in by the court reporter.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Delfs. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development for the City of Lancaster.
Good evening. I'm Betsy Logan. I'm the Planning Bureau Chief for the City of Lancaster. I do.
Okay. Ms. Logan, have you prepared some exhibits for tonight that have been marked for identification?
I have, yes. The first exhibit I have is the legal notice of the public hearing that it was advertised on June 9th and June 16th. The second item I have is the agenda for tonight's meeting. I have the minutes from the City Council meeting of October 14th for the first reading. And I have a memo from the City of Lancaster Planning Commission on the draft zoning ordinance dated November 5th. And I have a report from Lancaster County Planning Commission on the ordinance, which was drafted in November.
Thank you. Okay, the legal notice respecting advertisement on the 9th and the 16th, has that, what exhibit number is that?
1,
That's City Exhibit 1? Okay, and the agenda is City 2?
yes.
Okay, as far as the agenda goes, was that agenda put up on the township the city website at least 24 hours before tonight's hearing?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and was that also posted on the meeting room here, at least 24 hours in advance?
Yes, it was.
And are copies of the agenda available here for the public?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and you also see that there's a data center zoning amendment handout that has been prepared of 2 pages that is available to the public as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay. With that, I will allow you to proceed with your presentation.
I recognize that we were having a few technical difficulties with a few of the documents with City Clerk right before the meeting here. I just wanted to make sure that we do have the presentation
Yep.
available.
And I will remind you that since you're both under oath, you hand off as far as the best way to make the presentation, to make it smoother, whichever, between the two of you, that's fine.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
I think I did the wrong one. Gotcha. Okay. Let me try to start.
While we're waiting on the technology here, I think it might be worth just giving a little preface here. I would say to start that my job tonight, or at least one of my main jobs tonight, is to provide some additional context and recent history related to this particular zoning amendment. As most of you know, many of the public members in the audience and stakeholders and members of council, this has been a long process for this particular zoning ordinance, but I do also recognize that we have some new members of council, and for that reason in particular, we wanted to take some additional time to go back over that history. I hope that it is not too redundant. We really do intend for it to be useful. Okay, are we all set? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. Just very briefly, wanted to note here what we're going to cover in our city staff presentation. As I said, we're going to talk about the background and purpose of the ordinance. We are going to outline and highlight key provisions from the first draft. Then we will express what we've heard from a number of different public and community stakeholders, and in particular, comments that we have heard from the City Planning Commission and from the County Planning Commission as well. We'll also talk about the city staff analysis of those comments and recommendations, and then the revisions that were made to the ordinance. We'll wrap that up to talk about the revised draft and the next steps in the process. I'm going to keep the background on AI very brief. I think we all have a good understanding about what has been happening nationwide and globally, but I think it's just important for the record to state that artificial intelligence and cloud computing are driving explosive global demand for digital infrastructure. This is a challenge not just in Lancaster County and Lancaster City, it is a challenge everywhere. I think it is interesting to note that there have been a number of different leadership positions on this topic across the United States. Governor Shapiro has generally announced Pennsylvania's support for new data center development across the Commonwealth, although it's fair to recognize, obviously, a lot of different positions on this particular issue. 2 data centers were proposed in Lancaster City. Those 2 locations are at 216 Greenfield Road and at 1375 Harrisburg Pike. And the existing zoning code had no specific regulations for this type of use, and it was originally classified as a warehousing and storage use. This What we're talking about tonight is to define data centers as a new use and different from any other we have in the zoning ordinance with different impacts. And we're going to talk about some of those impacts over the course of the presentation tonight. Okay. Defining a data center. At the heart of what we're trying to do here is to establish a distinct land use definition which is separate from what has been used in the past, warehousing, storage, other industrial categories. We recognize that we want to make sure that this particular kind of use is established in the proper zoning districts. And so our job as staff and as city council is to identify the appropriate zoning districts where data centers may be considered, and that should be through a structured legal review process. In addition to that, wanted to note that the ordinance does require a number of specific technical or functional reports related to important issues such as noise, energy, water, waste, thermal output, and emergency response plans as well. And that would be part of every zoning application related to data centers. We also want to ensure that there are clear development standards and that we're creating specific measurable standards for setbacks, buffers, screening, landscaping, fencing, parking, and site design. Going back to what I said about the explosive growth of artificial intelligence, we do need to find a way to address this growing demand, and we have to respond proactively to that increased demand that's happening across Pennsylvania. We also want to ensure compatibility, meaning that we are protecting surrounding land uses and neighborhoods from noise, environmental, and visual impacts. And ultimately, we do want whatever is happening with data centers to align with broader community goals, and that reflects priorities in our comprehensive plan, our Future Lancaster, and Places 2040, the county's comprehensive plan, related to sustainable development, quality of life, and responsible growth. It's really, comprehensive plans are really about managing growth and change, and this is a very critical case in point. I wanted to take a moment to speak about the timeline of this process. I know it has been a little while since we have talked about this particular ordinance before council, but this is the latest milestone in a pretty long road. There was a lot of debate and public dialogue about the data centers during 2025, and after much of that dialogue, the city council at that time did ask both the city solicitor and city staff on August 25th, 2025, made a formal request for staff to develop a zoning, a data center zoning ordinance. In fact, at that time, the staff had already started working on some concepts related to data centers, and we actually really appreciated the formal request that had come from council at that time on August 26th. It gave us a charge and it gave us a deadline. We came back to City Council on October 6th and introduced a draft amendment before Council Committee on that date, October 6th. And then following that meeting, at the next regular council meeting on October 15th, there was a first reading of that draft. Per legal requirements under the Municipal Planning Code, that draft of the ordinance then went to the City Planning Commission, and it also went to the County Planning Department and the County Planning Commission. That in itself is a fairly long process. The county has minimum 45 days to review that themselves. We did get comments back. I really appreciate the work. There were a lot of community stakeholders that ended up providing input into that process. And we did receive formal comments from the City Planning Commission on October 16th, 2025. They were already prepped and ready to go. That's why it happened really the very next day, right after October 15th, the City Council meeting. Then on November 10th, we received the comments from the County Planning Commission. We did get a lot of comments, particularly from the county planning department. We also reviewed other specialized stakeholders who had provided comments to us. And so it took a while for us to do that analysis and staff and ultimately to revise the ordinance. That happened throughout the spring of this year, 2026. And that ultimately led to the revised ordinance that you see before you today. The first public notice related to that ordinance was provided or issued on June 9th, 2026, and the second public notice was issued on June 16th, 2026. So that brings us to today, our special meeting of council and our hearing. So where we go from here depends on the rest of our dialogue and council's decisions. There is an official definition for data center that has now been established in this ordinance. That definition reads as follows. It's a facility whose primary purpose is the centralized storage, processing, management, or dissemination of digital data, information, or applications. This includes, but is not limited to, server farms, cloud computing hubs, co-location centers, and telecommunication switching hubs. Data centers typically house large-scale computer systems and supporting infrastructure such as backup generators, cooling systems, and uninterruptible power supplies. A data center generally includes environmental controls such as air conditioning and fire suppression, redundant backup power supplies, redundant data communications connections, and high security. I know that was a mouthful, but I just did want us all to take a moment and look at the formal definition. Later in the presentation, Betsy will get into more of the details related to the zoning ordinance content. Just as an overview, I wanted to note here that the first draft, which was brought to City Council in October, here are the key provisions related to that first draft. That first box on the presentation shows where the ordinance permitted data center use and the review process that it entails. So you can see that the original ordinance had allowance for data centers in the suburban manufacturing zone and in the central manufacturing zone, and any approval would be issued through a special exception process by the zoning hearing board. Then, as I noted a little bit earlier in the introduction, there are environmental and community impact components of the ordinance. Most of those revolve around these specialized reports that are required on topics of interest. There is a community meeting required before any zoning hearing board action that's outside of the zoning hearing board process. And also we noted that renewable energy is encouraged through the zoning ordinance. We are not able to require that through the zoning ordinance because that is not legally permissible. Zoning law is not the appropriate place to do that. And then finally, that first ordinance, the first draft of the ordinance had development standards related to setbacks, buffers and screening, parking, and noise. Although it is not the only important part of the ordinance, I think that it is safe to say the geographic locations where data centers are allowed is really at the hub of our, at the crux of our conversation. And so we did want to put this slide in the presentation and address this question up front. As you can see, the central manufacturing zone in our zoning map is represented in red here. And that is, it represents a total of 179 lots, 179 properties. And those, while they are, according to our zoning code, they are industrial use parcels, they are, because of their central manufacturing, are located closer to mixed use and residential neighborhoods in some cases, and they're more integrated with surrounding community fabric. And so there may be a higher sensitivity to noise and traffic and visual impacts. The The suburban manufacturing, on the other hand, is represented in blue. As you can tell, it covers a smaller geographic area in total and represents 16 lots or properties. And if you read the narrative in our zoning code, it does speak to the fact that suburban manufacturing is intentionally more isolated industrial commercial context. It does have better compatibility with data center or other intensive industrial uses. There's access to limited access highways and major roads, and also important for data centers, connection to high voltage transmission lines as well. Okay. Another question that was heavily debated among city staff was a question of whether to use the special exception or conditional use process in evaluating and making decisions related to data centers. What is probably most important to say here is that in either case, a special exception or a conditional use, there are basically two different bodies that could be making the decision here. In the case of the special exception, that would be the zoning hearing board. That is the more typical path, or it would be the city council that would be making the decision through the conditional use process. Currently, we only have one type of conditional use in the city overall, and that is the singular convention center. Sorry.
We also have, large shopping centers over 150,000 square feet.
Oh, thank you. Thank
So,
you
like,
for the
possible.
correction.
Yep.
This is why the chief planner is here. Two uses. Excuse the error. In the case of either the zoning hearing board or the city council, it's important to note that either body has to apply the same legal standards that are in the ordinance to make the decision. I think there maybe has been some understanding in the past that the city council has more leeway through the conditional use. From a legal standpoint, that is not really intended to be the case. If either body were to diverge from applying the law correctly, then in either case there would be legal exposure for the city. A few other aspects to the special exception versus the conditional use. We talked about the body that would hear the case. Also wanted to note here that for a special exception, the city acts as a party to the proceedings because the zoning hearing board is essentially an independent body. That means that the city could testify at the zoning hearing. It also means that if the city believed the zoning hearing board applied the law in error, that the city itself could actually appeal the decision. In the case of the conditional use, the council is the decision maker. One other aspect that I wanted to mention related to these two different types of bodies, and Mr. Albert may speak to this at some point, a zoning hearing board is a specialized body. It's meant to do this kind of thing, to handle zoning cases. It is also operates as a quasi-judicial body. For city council is typically a legislative body, a general legislative body. In the case of a conditional use hearing, you would essentially have to take on the role of a quasi-judicial body and act in that manner. That's not something that's impossible. That is a possibility in this case, and it is done in other jurisdictions. But we did want you to understand how these differences may play out in practice. Did you want to say anything else about this chart?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
the majority of our uses are, the majority of the uses are, that we have over 202 uses, and all of them except for the two convention center and the shopping centers that are over 150,000 square feet are all special exceptions. So they go to the zoning hearing board. And the zoning hearing board is very experienced in hearing special exceptions. There's specific criteria that they have to meet. It's the same criteria for conditional uses, but it talks about lighting and trash and impact that need to be identified during that process for the permit, for the application to be approved. So what we heard, as Chris said, we got quite a few comments, not just from the City Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission, but from our Wilson Engineering, who is our engineering consultant through DPW. We heard from Regeneral, we received community comments, and we also had, as we started the process of updating our zoning ordinance, we reviewed our proposed changes with Clarion, who is handling, the consultant who's handling our zoning ordinance amendment. But because of how we're making the changes, we really are focusing on the formal City Planning Commission comments and the County Commission comments. So the big ones that the city had, they really wanted it in the suburban manufacturing district only. They wanted it as a conditional use. They had requested that there be specific thresholds for noise, and they wanted clear air quality and energy standards. The County Planning Commission had more comments similar to the Planning Commission, but they also commented on the definition and standards, adding some more information for noise and vibration, water utilization, decommissioning, environmental impact, and thermal heat. And this is a high-level overview of their comments. What we did was we evaluated all of these comments, including the ones that we received that weren't from the two bodies. And we did a pretty thorough assessment of what was aligning, were everybody commenting on the same things, were they different comments, did they, like where we were at. And then we also were looking at what could we change with the first draft that wouldn't be so substantial that it would require it to go back to the County Planning Commission for another 45-day review. So that was really the focus, because we wanted to get this before you as soon as possible, since obviously the need is growing for data centers. What we ended up doing was we adopted the recommendations that directly addressed a land use impact, that was within the MPC zoning authority, and that strengthened the ordinance without legal risk. We modified some of the changes as well, the existing ordinance, to recommendations that had merit but just needed an adjustment for legal defensibility, enforceability, or alignment with city practice or the municipality's planning code authority. So we did a very deep dive of like what was specifically allowed in the municipality's planning code, and looked at it in addition to case law, and then our solicitor provided obviously his oversight on that process. So just the changes between the two drafts. The first draft permitted the use in both the central manufacturing and the suburban manufacturing district. It required a special exception process. There was no pending application provision. So as you'll see as we go through, we kind of separated out some of the application processes. We didn't have specific fencing height standards. We didn't have very defined buffer planning standards. We didn't require a post-construction noise study. It was kind of implied, but it wasn't directly stated. We didn't have standards for generator testing other than it could only be during the daytime. And then we did not have any plans for decommissioning. We had plans for disposal of electronic waste, but not for decommissioning of the whole facility. So as we worked through all these changes, what we prepared and is before you now is we the revised draft, which eliminated the central manufacturing district. So now it's only the 16 lots that were noted earlier. We did maintain the special exception provision. While the City Planning Commission would have liked it to be a conditional use, the County Planning Commission was favorable to either a special exception or conditional use. We added a pending applications clause to this ordinance as well, so that the two data centers that already are under construction and under land development are able to maintain the status that they are moving forward in. We added fencing requirements. We had some fencing standards, but we added height requirements for them specifically. Required native species with detailed sizes and densities for buffer planning. We also included that they'd be both deciduous and coniferous trees so that there's constant screening all throughout the year. Required the post-construction noise study, enhance the generator testing limits so that there are not just daytime, but time limits and not allowed on Sundays and holidays. And then included a decommissioning plan with financial security. I would also note that as we were going through this process in between October and drafting the revisions, I would say there's been an explosion of information that really wasn't available in September, October when we were drafting these, that we were able to utilize because as it was noted, everyone is trying to deal with this. So not just the Lancaster County Planning Commission had updated their white paper on it, but other planning commissions in the area have also provided really good detailed ones, and there's even more draft ordinances out. So we did take those into account as we were reviewing and making changes. So again, like related to the technical and performance standards, the original draft did not require the post-construction noise study. It is now required within 12 months of certificate of occupancy. Generator testing is prohibited on Sundays and federal holidays and requires advance city notice. The noise threshold, well, the standard is the same. We clarified the reference to pre-construction ambient noises, that it can't exceed pre-construction ambient noises. So with the two noise studies, the one tests for the ambient noise before the project is, as part of the application, and then they have to come back 12 months later and verify that they have not exceeded those noise levels. We added more standards on the perimeter fence requirement as far as 8 to 10 feet in height, and that the site is fully enclosed. I kind of already overviewed the buffer planting requirements and the decommissioning plan, which would require financial security as well as a 24-month compliance timeline. For the ground screening, we added minimum of 12 feet visual screening heights for ground-mounted components. And then for the one that was a little iffy on energy related to good faith efforts, we tried to define that a little bit more without passing like where we can require energy standards by defining good faith as it requires demonstration through on-site generation, PPAs, or combination of both. So the final ordinance at a glance has a pre-construction noise plan, a post-construction noise plan, air quality reporting, energy management, a water utilization report, e-waste and decommissioning, thermal mitigation, emergency response plan. We added some more to that too, the buffer yards and landscaping plan, and then community information meeting was expanded a little bit. The main impacts for the changes was that we kept the data center, having it in the suburban manufacturing district is really the best district for it. We really took into account everyone's concerns with having in CM, and we did do a pretty deep dive on the analysis for suburban manufacturing and what lots could be affected, what are already built on, and how close they are to transmission lines. So we feel that it provides a good balance between business protection and community protection. Again, the special exception process, because we felt it was important to have the independent board of the zoning hearing board review the plan. We did keep that in so that the city can continue to participate as a party to proceedings, and it's consistent with our practices. So now we have over 10 plus required plans and studies. They're performance-based, not one size fits all. Each proposal has to demonstrate compliance with the noise, water, air, energy, environmental, and safety standards. And then the other note is that the pending applications it's not part of the zoning ordinance itself, it's a part of the ordinance that's in front of you that basically grandfathers in the two existing places. Do you want to do the next steps?
Yes, and sorry, just one final note on that last slide, if you could go back for a moment. I know many of us spent so much time on the other proposed data centers, and I think many of you are aware of the community benefits agreement that was approved by City Council. the community benefits agreement is a contractual document that will hold the data centers at the Greenfield Road site and the Harrisburg Pike site to the standards in that particular document. So I think the best way to think about this is that we covered those two sites through a different vehicle, through the CBA, and this zoning ordinance will cover any proposals coming in the future related to data centers.
Anything further?
Going the wrong way. No, I'm going the wrong way.
Okay. I'd like to thank the city witnesses for their presentation. And before I turn this back over to council for council's questions, I would like to briefly comment on one issue in this packet of complicated proposals that have been made. I'm very familiar with this ordinance and including the question of whether this ordinance should be administered by the City Zoning Hearing Board under a special exception standard, or whether it should come to City Council as a conditional use matter. And two observations I have here is that if someone is going to want to try to do a data center on one of these 16 parcels, they're going to come in with deep pockets, and they'll view that as a matter of fighting money, that they are going to want to aggressively pursue that data center plan. And I am very mindful that many citizens of the city are very concerned about data centers in the city. And that is a recipe for a series of complex and highly contested hearings that could go on for some time. I would say they could go on for months and months, except that, not to take you too far into the weeds, but the applicant has the right to demand an accelerated hearing schedule under the municipality's planning code, where basically hearings have to be concluded within a fairly brief time period, 3 or 4 months. This could be an incredible administrative dislocation on city council, because the business of the city is not going to stop while you're sitting doing all those hearings. So from an administrative point of view, it makes more sense to give this to the body who is doing these things anyway. And also, the City Zoning Hearing Board they do special exceptions. They do about 200 special exception categories. They deal with this all the time. They have counsel who is very clear about zoning law, and they're the body that has expertise. And zoning is very, very technical. There are about 1,000 lawyers in Lancaster County. There are about 20 of them who I would judge as being able to handle a heavy zoning case. For many years, if you had an appeal from a decision of the Court of Common Pleas in Pennsylvania, you took your appeal to the Superior Court. That was the General Court of Appeals jurisdiction. They heard all cases. Finally, about 40-some years ago, they gave up on that and they created a specialized court, the Commonwealth Court, which hears municipal law cases, zoning being one of the biggest categories they do. And the Superior Court doesn't hear those anymore. That whole thing has been shifted over to a specialized appeals court. So there's some precedent for considering it that way, like specialized things should be dealt with by specialized bodies. Now, it's a pleasure of council to do as they will, but that's my own observations on the situation. President Ahmed, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Albert, and thank you, Director Delfs and Ms. Logan, for your detailed presentation. I think there's been a lot of collaborative work that has been done throughout this process, and I think there are a lot of community protections in this amendment as proposed, such as public meeting requirements, plans for decommissioning, noise study requirements, and defining good faith energy efforts, and only keeping it in the suburban manufacturing, which is only 16 parcels of land. But if you could please just once again touch on the question over conditional use versus special exception, and how, even if it were conditional use in the amendment, that would not simply give council the ability to make any decision it sees fit on potential zoning of land use of data centers.
Yeah. So for a special exception or conditional use, they all have a list of standards that need to be met. If the applicant can prove that those standards are being met for either body, the application has to be approved. It's the same for land development as far as if they meet all the requirements in subdivision land development, the planning commission has to approve it regardless if the use is something that you're interested or not in or you don't want. You can't deny it just on the basis of the fact that you don't like it. So if the applicant can prove that they meet all those standards and they're not going to cause harm to a community, then the application needs to be approved. Is that enough information, or do you want me to go a little deeper?
No, thank you. I think that answers my question. And my final question, and Mr. Albert touched on this in his comments, if council were not to move forward with the amendment as proposed, what potential challenges do we open ourselves up with new data centers that may appear on the pipeline while we may further litigate this in council or while we may send this back to the drawing board?
President Ahmed, that's a really good question, and it's one that we've wrestled with staff quite a bit. I will say, as director of the department and responsible for these issues, I do have a concern about wishing to move expeditiously and have an ordinance in place that creates these standards. We do not have any formal proposal before us at this time for any new data centers beyond the two that we're aware of. However, we've already had 2 or 3 inquiries, conceptual inquiries about data centers. I don't say that to say we one day or 2 days will make a difference, but I do think that there is real value in moving ahead. One of the things that we've also talked about internally as staff is we wanted to have a well thought through ordinance put into place, which this is the product of 8 months of work. We're about to do 2 more years of work on a comprehensive zoning rewrite, and we will be revisiting these standards as part of that process as well. I'm not sure there will be dramatic changes to this ordinance, but there could be. Technology may change a lot in the next 2 years, and I think both those components really have weighed heavily on the decision-making for us.
If I may, I would like to comment further on something Mr. Delf said, is that, as you said, right now, there is no, as of this moment, there is no regulation of data centers in the city. We don't provide for them anywhere. If someone were to file an application to put one in today, they would probably file for a special exception on the basis that it's a use that our ordinance does not provide for. If that were to happen, that would be a very difficult matter to handle because the standards for that are very loose and all the protections in this ordinance would not be in place. So that I second the comments of the planning department on that score.
Thank you, Mr. Albert. And my final question is around the 2 proposed data centers at Greenfield and Harrisburg Pike. You already touched on this, but just for some community benefit, if we could just once again explain how those were negotiated under the community benefits agreement and how they would not be retroactive to the zoning text amendment.
Yes, that is correct. This zoning ordinance would not apply to the 2 data centers that have already been formally applied for. I think it is worth noting that there are some parts of this ordinance that actually would be beneficial for those particular land development proposals. I have consulted with our solicitor about this, and he did advise that if there is a component of this ordinance that is beneficial to both the city, it's seen as satisfactory to both the city and the applicant, that they could incorporate that. So, for example, on the Harrisburg Pike site, there is a desire to provide less required parking on the site given what is in the current industrial ordinance. And if the desire there from city staff is we would actually like to see that parking part of the ordinance applied to the Harrisburg Pike site. So in that case, they could take something that is beneficial, but on the whole, they are not bound by anything in this ordinance.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate your answering of questions. And with that, I'll open it up to council comments. And we'll go right down the line. We'll start with Councilor Gastineau.
Thank you so much for sharing all that you did. I have a couple of questions. The first question is, how often is the quote testing and routine maintenance of generators? I know you said it was daytime hours, no Sundays, no federal holidays, but is it something that would happen weekly, monthly, or just once a year?
I think that's a difficult one to ask because we are talking about data center proposals that we have not seen yet. They're future data centers, and it would really depend entirely on the design and operation of that particular facility. For the particular facilities that have already been proposed, it is very often, and they're doing. The way that is handled is that they're testing small sections of the generators a phase at a time.
Thank you. And I just wanted to confirm that no suburban manufacturing districts border any residential districts on the zoning, in the zoning map?
I would have to look at that. Let me do a little bit of looking right now, and I'll get back to you on that if that's all right. I don't want to give you the wrong information.
I think I could answer that question in general. We do have instances. I don't know about all of the parcels in suburban manufacturing off the top of my head, but we do have instances where there's a residential use next to some kind of commercial use or manufacturing use. And that's why a lot of the dimensional aspects of the protections are in place. So especially if you are talking about a residential area being closer to suburban manufacturing or even central manufacturing, consider another kind of industrial use. Having those buffer standards, dimensional standards in place is intended to protect as much as possible the residential properties.
Sure. Do you feel like the setbacks that were listed in the ordinance and the buffers are the maximum or the minimum to prevent, residential from having to hear the noise or anything else?
I mean, we did look at that in a lot of different ways. So I don't think we could say either way because I think it's just such a new technology. Really, the only ones that we have to go off of that are closest are the massive ones in Virginia, and I mean that's just obviously an alley full of data centers, right? It's enormous impact. What we think, based on the other ordinances reviewed and the research that we've done, is that we think it'll be adequate for our data centers, and especially with the changes to the noise requirements, where they have to be at the ambient noise at the property line. Then it ideally will have no impact between the screening and the setback and the landscaping and the buffers and all of that we require. But again, it's an unknown.
Just one more question then. So I heard in your presentation that the City Planning Commission had recommended conditional use and the County Planning Commission was okay with either conditional use or special exception. Who made the decision to go with special exception and why did you come to that conclusion?
So we talked about it for a long time. It was a decision made between, I think, myself and Chris and our solicitor. Mostly our solicitor. We really looked at what impact would going with conditional use have on the city council versus what kind of impact it would have on the zoning hearing board and how the city could support the application, or if they didn't agree that the application met the standards, how they could fight the application. And we just felt like that was a higher priority than having city council make that decision.
And I can add, the city solicitor and I discussed that at some length, and for exactly the reasons I mentioned here tonight, he was persuaded to recommend to the planning department that we handle it in that fashion. This matter was carefully considered.
Thank you. That concludes my questions.
Thank you. Do we have any further council comments? Mr. Stolz, please go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. I have a lot of questions, but I will try to, I guess, somewhat limit them. I want to start out with a comment. I was on the Planning Commission last year when we found out that we were getting 2 data centers without any public input, very little transparency, and I believe that was wrong. And I know I recognize some of the folks in the room, and I think we lost a lot of trust with the community because of that process. And we have work to do to build that trust back. I also want to thank the folks that came out tonight, because it was part of the reason that we have a community benefits agreement for those 2 data centers was the public pressure that you guys brought and filled both council and planning commission meetings. So thank you for that. We're in a better place than we could be because of your input. But I also want to say, what I want to do here tonight is make sure that we have an opportunity to hear from folks and hear your concerns. I'm going to ask for, an open mind. What I'm concerned about is, what we've heard. We don't have any regulations in place right now. I live in Cabbage Hill. Kunzler, the Kunzler property was up for sale for a while, and I was nervous. Are we going to have a data center on that property without any proper regulations? I think the work that the team has done over the last 6-7 months, we're in a much better position with this draft than we were. As it's been noted, and it's noted in the text amendment, this is an interim text amendment. We are doing a longer-term comprehensive zoning update. We will have an opportunity to make additional changes. So I want to make sure I have some questions. I know lots of other folks have some questions. I don't want perfect to get in the way of good. So I would just ask that have an open mind and make sure that we get answers to all of our questions. So let me jump into some questions. I do really appreciate, again, I was on Planning Commission when we made some of these recommendations. I really appreciate the limitation to suburban manufacturing. It really doesn't make sense to me at all to include central manufacturing, so I think that was a great change. We have a much more robust decommissioning requirements in this draft. So there's some good stuff in here. I want to maybe start with the 16 parcels that are in the suburban manufacturing. I don't know if you've done this analysis to look at, with the buffers and the setbacks and the other requirements, do we know how many of those 16 parcels actually could be eligible for a data center? Are we talking all of them or some of them? Do we know that question?
Betsy did do this analysis recently leading up to the hearing, so we can provide some more information about characteristics of those properties. I would just note, one of the main characteristics that people think about is the size of the parcel, and that is obviously very relevant. However, we actually don't know. There are different types of data centers. There are different sizes of data centers. So size isn't the only characteristic. It's an important one, but there is actually a data center that we had located that was just outside the city. There was a fairly small size one. Now, I don't think the capabilities are like what is proposed at those on Greenfield and Harrisburg Pike, but that's been there for seemingly years without anyone knowing it was there, and it was a smaller type of data center. So I think I would just note that what we've heard about in the news, or even the data centers that were proposed here, are not all like that, and perhaps they may even get smaller with better technology. But with that said, I'd like to let Betsy speak to some of the other property characteristics.
Sure. So we didn't do a full analysis, but with each property, putting in the setbacks and the buffer yards and all of that. What we did do is we reviewed all 16 lots. We checked to see if they already had existing structures, if they were vacant land, their proximity to the transmission lines, their size again. So we have 2 that are less than an acre in size. So I don't think generally that those would be usable with all the requirements that they're supposed to put in. We have 7 of those lots are between 1 and 5 acres. 2 of them are between 5 and 10 acres, and then 5 are between 10 and 20. We don't have any properties that exceed 20 acres. Now, if you're under the same ownership, you can still, build on a property that might be larger. But we did look at who the largest owners were and how much land they owned, and the 4 biggest ones, not including the proposed data center would be Lowe's. Amtrak owns 3 lots adjacent to the site, as well as the train tracks. Lancaster Leaf Tobacco Company has 2, and then Costco is the other one. So currently, they're all built on right now. But again, like, you can always consolidate property. You can, there's things that can be done that wouldn't like prevent them from coming in. But we really feel like that 10 to 20 acres is probably the site that people would be looking at. I think the 2 sites that we have are just really unique, and based on their proximity to the transmission lines and the size and the fact that they're, buildings that aren't getting used or haven't been used for a long time. Just, I don't see that, but obviously we can't, predict the future. And I do agree that, like, I do feel like even since we started drafting this ordinance, technology has changed so much, and we're hearing about new sources that, don't need that energy capacity that needs to be by a transmission line. But I think by keeping it in the CM, we are definitely saving ourselves and like removing the central manufacturing.
If I can follow up a little bit on what Ms. Logan said, I'm sure there's somebody in the audience who is thinking, well, why don't we impose a 20-acre minimum lot requirement or a 30-acre minimum lot requirement? And the answer is that's suicide legally. Every municipality is under an obligation to accept its fair share of legal uses that fit geographically within the municipality. And if your ordinance excluded everything, then they can go anywhere. They could file an application to go in anywhere they could get an agreement of sale for, and the zoning ordinance would be thrown out. They would be allowed to do it without any of the procedural requirements here. I don't think we want to see that one. But I mean, I'm sure somebody's thinking that, and that's why we can't do that.
Yeah, and so the County Planning Commission did recommend like a minimum lot area, but we didn't include that recommendation.
Yeah, so for 2 reasons. One, the recommendation was 40 acres, so we don't have any lots that are exceeding that size. Obviously, the biggest one is half that size. Yeah. The other reason is because we didn't have a minimum in the first draft. We felt like adding a minimum, to the second draft would be a change that might trigger going back to the county again, or that would most likely trigger going back to the county again.
Okay, very helpful. So I've heard, I have some questions about this, and I've heard a lot of folks have reached out to me asking questions. You've mentioned kind of some of the plans and the reports that are required as part of the application process. I'm curious about like what enforcement and monitoring looks like for some of these. So the noise ordinance seems to have a clear, pre-construction, post-construction, and then if there's any additional noise post-construction, my understanding is that would be a zoning violation, which would result in some sort of enforcement. Can you explain what that would look like?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I think it's a helpful, or it's a good opportunity to draw the distinction between the community benefits agreement and the zoning law. Again, here, in the case of the CBA, if there was a violation of those standards, then the city could potentially pursue legal action under that sort of contract law. In the case of the standards here, it would be through in my understanding is it would be through the zoning process. I might ask Mr. Albert to confirm what I'm saying here, but essentially there is a standard violation process that we use for other types of zoning violations, and I believe that would apply here in the same sort of way.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And if we made changes kind of separately to the noise ordinance, would those apply to data centers? So, for example, like we don't currently have any sort of decibel level in our noise ordinance, at least not that I'm aware of. So if we changed that noise ordinance, separately, would that then apply to a data center land use?
I'm not sure about the relationship, but I'll say that I am sorry that Mr. Hanwerger is not here tonight to talk about the history of the noise ordinance. I know that there was a change at some time in the past to define the impact to define the standards in the noise ordinance according to the impact as perceived by the person who is being impacted by the noise. And the city has thought of that as actually a stronger standard than a particular number. I don't know if Mr. Albert could speak to, I don't know how much you know about the noise ordinance, but if you could speak to the interaction of the two.
Just in passing, it's my understanding that the noise ordinance is not applied to ordinary manufacturing businesses, the noise incident to ordinary manufacturing operations.
I also, sorry,
I'm
just,
prepared to be corrected if my impression is wrong, but that's my understanding.
yeah, that is, thank you for that. I know we did have this conversation when I was on planning commission about like setting decibel levels. And, you know, I think one of the things that I brought up in that meeting was that my understanding is that data centers often, it's not like it's a loud noise, it's a low kind of hum, which to me, it actually does seem like maybe it is better to have it as we have now rather than having decibel levels, because we're looking at the difference in the noise pre and post. And even if it's a, you know, if it's a low hum that it maybe doesn't reach a certain decibel level, but it is a change in noise, we can still have some enforcement. Okay, sorry, I'll try to go through the rest of these quickly, but air quality testing, and like what sort of enforcement would happen around air quality for a data center?
This is something that we studied in depth during the CBA process, and what we had, well, I'll say what I learned. I think experts in the field already knew is that the air quality standards are all regulated through state law. And so really what we were trying to do both in the CBA and in the zoning ordinance here is really connect and integrate into that state process.
So those would be regulated, the air quality would be regulated at the state level?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think by requiring the air quality testing be performed and requiring those reports to be sent to the city, then that at least can help us determine whether or not they are meeting the state standards.
Yes.
So the energy management plan, like how would energy use be monitored, and what kind of enforcement, what does enforcement look like for that?
Is this related to the type of energy and the renewable energy?
No, sorry, this is related to, sorry, I'm trying to look at two different, actually, yeah, under energy use, an energy management plan shall be submitted with the zoning application detailing at a minimum annual electricity demand, what supply sources will be utilized. So how would that plan be kind of monitored and enforced?
Well, I think the last sentence in that clause kind of provides a little bit of guidance on that, and that the city will have the right to request supplemental or amended plans based on any comments that we receive, or I'm sure if there's violations that those could also be addressed in that capacity.
Okay.
But it would still most likely require a zoning violation.
Okay. Looking at the county planning commission recommendations, looks like they were recommending including a letter of authorization from the energy provider confirming capacity and providing any known info about impact on energy rates. Is that something that we considered?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, let me just make sure I'm looking at
You know what page it is also.
So I'm looking at actually the presentation from Lancaster County Planning Commission that has the comments. So this would be on page 44 of that PowerPoint presentation. Energy use power supply, letter of authorization from electric service provider certifying necessary capacity, any known impacts on consumer electric rates.
I'll let Betsy maybe reiterate. We had used a few like key screens to decide whether we would incorporate any recommendations. One was related to what was possible under municipal planning code and related law. I don't know if you have your notes here for that now.
I'm looking through, it's a kind of a large document. Yes, so both our determination on that one, that it was a high to medium risk because it conflicts with the Pennsylvania Utilities Commission, and that the MPC does not anchor any jurisdiction over that.
Okay. I will note, I believe there is some legislation at the state level that would require data centers to pay for their own power. So
Yes, I think that just passed the House.
It just
today,
passed the
right?
House, yes.
Yeah, I would also, just as a kind of caveat, it is my understanding that the County Planning Commission does not have an attorney who advises them when they propose ordinances.
Okay.
So we are getting the legal advice from our solicitor when we're reviewing all of these recommendations that might not have been incorporated in some of, and I would say, not just the Lancaster County one, but other planning commissions typically don't have that access.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I'm almost done, but water utilization report. So since the city owns our water, if the data center is using more water than it has been allocated, does the city have the ability as the owner to do something about that if a data center is not in compliance with the utilization that they had said they were going to be using?
Yeah, I appreciate this question, and I think this one is a little complex because there's a few different entities that interact here. But maybe the easiest way to explain this, and I hope I do this well. This is really more under DPW's purview, but the city is only permitted to pull so much water from our water sources, primarily the Susquehanna River and the Conestoga River. And that is regulated through the Susquehanna River Basin Commission, and I think a couple of other entities also at the state level. So you have to think at the outset, we only have access to so much water. And then for any land development, whether it's a data center or not, the city's water bureau is essentially evaluating the capacity of water that's available. So is there enough water available to serve that particular use? And then they're also analyzing whether the distribution system is there to deliver the water to that particular use. And if that is not feasible, if the capacity is not there, then our water bureau would deny the request for that water source or amount of water.
Okay. Yes, very helpful. So for community engagement, the County Planning Commission recommended 2 meetings, including one virtual, just to give folks more opportunities to give input. If that's something that the council would want to include, which would be a change, is that considered a substantial change that would have to restart this whole process, or is that a change that we would be able to make? Maybe that's a question for you.
Well, thank you. Yes, I believe that is a question for me. Councilman, I'm going to say that I'm going to be very conservative on this, that almost, if we need to correct typographical errors, that's not a substantial change. But any change that is important enough that somebody's could possibly fight about it or could disagree about it, if we pass it tonight without taking it back through County Planning Commission, we've planted a time bomb. Somebody could challenge that ordinance saying, oh, you passed it, you had a substantial change, and you just passed it, and now this ordinance is invalid. And if this ordinance is invalid, just think for a moment, folks, about what that would mean for the next person who comes in for it with a data center application, because all the protections we're talking about would not apply to them. I think that even the risk that something is considered a substantial change is, you better be really certain you want to take that on before you make any changes here. If you do want to make substantial changes, that's fine. That'll push things back about 90 days or 120 days because we got to go through the comment period again. But my legal advice to council here tonight is anything that is any significant change at all runs the risk of creating a potential challenge later on to someone who wants to challenge this ordinance.
I guess I don't understand how that's a significant change if we're just adopting what the County Planning Commission recommended in the first place. So why would it have to go back to them?
Well, imagine someone with a lot of lawyers and a lot of money who wants to really underline this and take it to court and tie up the city for a couple of years in litigation, and maybe they win and maybe they lose. But the danger has been created if we make any significant changes in this thing tonight.
Okay.
This may be too conservative advice, but I mean, I
That
have
sounds very
responsibility to
conservative in my opinion.
tell you my best advice.
I would find it hard to believe that we would get sued over requiring one more public meeting, but I could be wrong.
One thing that I might just add for context, I think the real purpose here was to ensure that there was a chance for the public not just to interact with the developer and ask questions, but it was really to make sure that the information was spread far and wide earlier so that people could be directed to the appropriate process. Because whether it's one meeting or two community meetings, no one's going to be able to, if the desire is to stop that project, for example, that's not going to be possible at the community meeting. But if those community members are directed to the zoning hearing board, then they do have, there's an actual transaction that they could weigh in on at that time. So I understand your question about 1 versus 2, but the zoning hearing board meetings are public, and for a use of this size or project of this size, there will probably be more than one meeting even at the zoning hearing board. So
Yeah, that is helpful. And I think it is just an important reminder is that, yes, there will be a community meeting and zoning hearing board. There will be
Correct.
multiple opportunities for the public to engage. I want to just confirm, I think you've already said this, Director Delps, but I do want to just confirm that the Section 6B is just simply the grandfather clause for the 2 existing data centers that are covered by the CBA. There are no other pending applications or anything in the works that would be above and beyond those 2 sites.
yes, that is absolutely correct. There have been no formal complete applications for any other data centers. As I did mention, we've had at least 2 developers who have spoken to us about concepts, but those do not count as formal applications.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to add just one final comment. I apologize to my folks up here and to the folks who want to ask questions, but I just want to note for my personal opinion is that the special exception is better than the conditional use. It really would put council in a very difficult position, like a no-win. Most of us up here also don't want to see more data centers, but to be able to basically have to follow land use law, which we are not experts on, I feel like that puts us in a really difficult position. And I think the zoning hearing board is much more. They are the experts. They are the ones that deal with these things all the time. I will also say, I want us to start working on some housing changes, and I do not want to spend our time with a bunch of hearings related to data centers, which would just take away from all of the other needs that we have in the community. So that's my 2 cents on that question. And I will.
Thank you, Councilor Stoltzfus. Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Councilor Stoltzfus, for those thorough questions. You hit on a few that I had, particularly the water use was really helpful to hear you all explain. This is great information. Just a comment at the top, I do think that I'm encouraged by this proceeding because we do need to rebuild some trust around the issue of data centers. I personally don't want to see any more in the city. I think that a lot of folks in this room feel the same way, and I want to recognize the importance of speaking some plain English around that. As somebody who works in communications, I think it's valuable going into public comment, and I think it's going to be great to hear from the public on this. But I can anticipate some questions and misunderstanding because we've all learned so much. I'm going to ask you some really basic questions to hear you articulate those before the public has a chance to weigh in. My first is one that I know the answer to, and I want to say it and get your take. Can the city, in theory, pass a zoning amendment that would define and then make it impossible for a data center to be built anywhere within the city's zoned limits?
The question is, would we be able to prohibit them entirely?
Entirely, yeah.
We are not able to do that. And Mr. Albert, can you confirm?
Mr. Albert's blood pressure is rising. No,
Okay.
absolutely not. That we have to provide for every legal land use, as I noted, and I have never even seen anyone try to do something like that. I mean, people try to work around it in a left-handed fashion, but no, if it's a legal land use, we can't ban it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. This is my understanding as well, but a lot of folks here, I know some folks are really in the weeds. I'm looking at Frank out there. He's been on this issue for a long time. I know he knows that, but we have folks who care, who are here, who are learning in real time, and I love to see that. So I want to just make sure that's clear. We have to legally allow these within city limits somewhere. And my next question to you is, do you believe this is the best, most narrow, legally defensible approach to restrict future data center developments within Lancaster City?
I do. And I think it is worth noting again that suburban manufacturing, the intent of that zoning district is for the most intensive industrial uses. And so we are containing data centers to that zoning district.
Thank you. And then can City Council pursue legal action against the Zoning Hearing Board if we feel they inaccurately approve a data center project under this new zoning amendment?
Our city solicitor, Mr. Handwerker, represents both the executive branch and the legislative branch. So in this case, also represents council. So my assumption here is it would be a joint decision amongst the administration and council to pursue an appeal.
Yeah, the getting aside from the mechanics of that, yes, the answer to Councilman's question is yes. This happens more than you might think, that a zoning hearing board does something that the municipality does not agree with, and the municipality will municipality is always a party to every zoning proceeding within its jurisdiction. And if the zoning board does something the municipality doesn't like, the municipality is always a party, and it always has an absolute right to appeal that decision to the county court and says, our zoning board was wrong in the way it handled this.
Great. So this does not kind of give us a way out. We still have, with a special exception, the ability to weigh in and make sure that we're a party to these decisions. I think that's what I was getting at.
Correct.
This is not council pulling away from responsibility. I think that this is us actually positioning ourselves well to take responsibility. And then lastly, I had a technical question. I'm not a sound engineer, but I've heard a lot of concerns around ground vibrations, and I don't know where the difference is between vibration and sound and how that's measured. And we've heard some horror stories from different areas in the country where people feel like they've been driven mad by very low frequency humming in the ground. And does that sort of vibration fall under the noise checks? And is that something that you all explored in this process?
Unfortunately, I am not an expert on that topic either. However, I can say that during the community benefits agreement process, we had a very, very deep dive where we hired a national noise expert. I had pulled his information again to share this with you all. And I think he did actually speak to council at one point via Zoom. Or perhaps that was our environmental consultant. In any case, Mr. Gabriel Weger, who works for Burns and McDonnell, he's an acoustics and noise control expert. He was the one who had advised us on the standards in the CBA, and a lot of the learning in the CBA we applied here. I would be happy to ask that question of him just for general knowledge. I don't know, Betsy, if you have any other comments, but I think he would probably be the best person to share any additional information on that front.
Yeah, we are aware of the vibration concerns, and we did factor that in, like, I believe that it would be required as part of the noise study.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you for all this information. I look forward to hearing what my neighbors have to say on the topic.
Thank you, Councilor Miller. Do we have any further council comments before we open it up to the public? Councilor Holland-Jones?
Yes, I did. One of the things that I wanted to ask about was, because Lancaster County has the worst air quality in the state, will this data center at all affect the air quality at all?
Ma'am, is your question about the two data centers at Greenfield and at Harrisburg?
Yes.
Yes, so that part is what's regulated by the state. There is a process when those data centers were proposed, they did meet a certain threshold for an analysis by the State Department of Environmental Protection. So they will be continuing to review those in an ongoing fashion. I agree with you. This is one of our big concerns as staff too, is related to the air quality. Sorry, there was another point that I wanted to make on this. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Did you want to say anything about our zoning ordinance?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the one big factor, and that was definitely impressed upon us by our solicitor, was that the air quality, unfortunately, is under state control. And so while we can request the reports on air quality, we don't have any ability to regulate it through the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, the legal term is preemption.
Yes. And I'm sorry, Counselor, and this gets a little tricky because the zoning ordinance that we're talking about today applies to any future data centers. What I wanted to say, in addition to the state regulation, the authority to regulate air quality, we also spent a great deal of time negotiating in the CBA for clean energy requirements. So there was a commitment in that CBA that the current developers of those two sites will be pursuing clean energy, and if they end up having any component of their energy portfolio as carbon-based emissions, they face very serious financial disincentives and would owe the city additional money.
Okay. One other question. Normally, when you talk about data centers, they say that it provides lots of employment opportunities. Well, on the other hand, what I'm told is that there really are just very few jobs that they actually have. How does that work out? Do you know?
There are a couple different components to that. For the construction phase, design and construction phase of data center, there are many, many jobs. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers with me today, but there are many, many jobs that are created for the ongoing operations.
That's more what I was thinking
of the data centers. I believe the latest estimate from Carissa Technology Parks, the developer, was about 200 jobs related to the data center.
Okay, thank you. My other questions were already answered by Councilor Stoltzfus on environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any final comments? Hearing none, we will open it to the public testimony. Once again, we will not be using the 3-minute light, but please keep decorum and please try to be respectful of others who would like to make comment. Anybody wishing to make comment, please start with your name and block of residence and feel free to line up at the microphone. Good evening, Mr. Dastra.
Good evening. Do you need me to swear in? No?
Normally, at a municipality's planning code hearing, we require people to be sworn in, but in light of the number of people who want to be testifying, and in light of the nature of the anticipated testimony, we're going to forego that tonight. But just if you can please identify yourself as the council president has indicated, that will be sufficient.
Sure.
It is not required that he be present. Okay.
Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. Do you need me to spell my last name? Dastra. Hello. So I do have a series of questions, and I will try to keep as many of them as simple as possible, but some are based off the presentation. Some I brought with me today. But we will start here. Mr. Delfs, are you the direct supervisor of the zoning officer?
No, I am the direct supervisor of Ms. Logan. There are 4 bureau chiefs that report to me. Betsy Logan is one of those bureau chiefs, and Jamil Thrash, the zoning officer, is a member of the planning bureau.
Mr. Albert, just a quick clarification. The public testimony, is this a question and answer session or is this a public testimony from?
No, this is for citizen comment on the pending ordinance. Yes, I think the point is well taken. I assume that you are about to address the pending ordinance, Mr.
Yes.
Dastra. Okay.
Yes. But I do have questions about the testimony they gave earlier in part. So The reason I asked is because I felt the timeline was lacking significant amount of dates where the zoning officer had correspondence with the developers for the 2 proposed data centers, starting as early as December 2024, in which then in February 2024, he released a decision letter where the city has made the position that data centers are warehouses. Is that still the position of the city?
Sir, I'm going to direct the, sir, if you don't want to answer that question, that's fine, because that's not material to the business of council tonight.
I think I would just simply say that we started the timeline as part of this presentation related to the development of this ordinance, since that was the point of this hearing tonight.
Sure. So let's get to the content of the ordinance. Mr. Stoltzfus, you're right. Good should, or perfect should not destroy good. Where did the definition for this ordinance come from?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Which definition?
The data center definition. Where was that derived from? Was it potentially out of documents provided to you by Mr. Arcolio?
I created it. I created it I looked at a number of definitions on the internet, and I came up with it myself.
That's interesting. Only because I had given a copy of a draft ordinance to Mr. Arcolio as well as other planning commission members who submitted it to city staff. Staff members recognizing those people of the public for providing these documents. And so I'm glad great minds must think alike, Mr. Albert, because we had word for word the exact same definition. So going forward to good versus perfect. Unfortunately, this ordinance is not good. It's not. We do need to remove the grandfathering clause. And we should also be making this a conditional use because under the state constitution, the natural resources and scenic and aesthetic beauty of the Commonwealth belong to the people of the Commonwealth, are held in trust by the government. Held in trust by the government, we own the resources, we the public, you all up there, us down here. It is appropriate for City Council to be reviewing such a high-intensity, resource-driven use because this is where you all need to answer those questions. We have 7 investigators instead of 3 and 2 alternates. We have 7 investigators on top of the mayor as well as city staff. So it's very appropriate that this is a conditional use and it should be supported as a conditional use, but that's a very easy change. Just change a letter. As far as it goes for the grandfathering clause, the grandfathering clause made me as a member of the public feel as though these data centers are actually not on solid legal foundation and we as the public still have room to fight this issue because why would it be included otherwise? I was very disturbed when the CBA passed because it seemed to give like some level of retroactive zoning approval to the developers, which is not how the MPC works. We all here know this. So it's very disturbing to see that language. So long story short, to make it very clear, the 7 of you are voting to approve data centers tonight. With that clause in there, you are voting to approve data centers. So it's very important that that language is stricken. Because yes, Mr. Ahmed, you are approving those data centers to be put in the city. You are formalizing that tonight. That is absolutely the case. If it was, I know you won't say anything, that's fine. Yeah, we as the public have great concerns about this. We have had great concerns about this. I'm confused why the city hasn't issued a notice of violation to the data center projects like they did for Blueprints the other day. Blueprints got a notice of violation. They went to zoning hearing board. When Mr. Arcolio applied to take these projects to the zoning hearing board, he was then taken to county court by the developers saying that there was no justification. The county court decided that there was never a decision made about whether these uses were applicable or not, which is really weird. Again, tonight you are retroactively approving these data centers for use. Because when was the decision made otherwise? I will take silence as a non-answer, like it just was never made. This is the decision. Fair enough. I understand my questions intimidate you, and that's okay. I'm a very intimidating person. A man of my stature, people just cower in fear. I can't help it. And I know I dress for success. We should be implementing a moratorium like we are given the right to already. I understand the House passed legislation today We need the Senate to approve that. So just respectfully, I think it's inappropriate to give the public hope through legislation that our legislators have not been effective for decades. We haven't, of the last 12 budgets, only 4 have been passed on time. So we should only wait until the governor's pen is on paper to really hold something to account. But today we can implement a temporary stay through a curative amendment for 180 days. That is the maximum. Little Britain Township did it. You all can do it. You can declare the ordinance as invalid and give yourselves 180 days to take this meh ordinance and actually make it good. Because this is not good. It's far from perfect. When Thaddeus Stevens approved the 13th Amendment, he said he worked amongst men, not angels. Because the clause to keep slavery as the punishment for a crime was included. I don't know how we get to good from this, because this still is not doing what the public asks and combating these data centers. It feels as a resident like when the wealthiest parts of our community come out to, for example, and I understand the concerns around blueprints, justifiable community concerns around blueprints. Why do we as the public see action there, have them given a notice of violation to go to the zoning hearing board? We have not even had our day in the zoning hearing board. It was mentioned tonight, use is not provided for, go to the zoning hearing board. This is confusing, it's confounding, it's controlling. We do need amendments to it, but I won't ask you to make those tonight. I mean, I have made 2 requests, strike 6B and make it a conditional use, not a special exception. But if you can't do that, just pass a moratorium so we have another 180 days to work on it. We've already waited longer than that. We can wait more if you put a stay for 180 days. We're happy with those protections. Sounds like we'd have more if we had that right now, frankly. So I do see there's a massive line behind me, and I know you won't answer any questions. So I appreciate your time. Have a good night.
Hello, my name is Bill Simonson. I live at 836 Rollridge Avenue. Not a lawyer or a legal expert, more so a social worker by trade. And I come to you tonight with perhaps more fire and brimstone than legal advice, but I will just simply say that any ordinance that supports the creation of data centers is an ordinance that supports lazy, non-thinking over creativity. Any ordinance that supports the creation of data centers in our city is an ordinance that supports massive job losses. We talked about job creation. Let's take the words of these AI billionaires themselves. They are bragging about massive job losses. Thirdly, any ordinance that supports the creation of data centers in this city is a slap in the face to the artists and the creatives who helped to make this city what it was, many of whom were here and who had businesses downtown before this became a trendy place to live. And lastly, any support, any ordinance, any vote for the support of the creation of data centers in this city is a vote to give more power, more support to Elon and the other billionaires in this country. Trillionaires, thank you. It's if they don't already have enough money. Now, I'm coming up here tonight, and you heard from Tony, and you're hearing from others, because most of us are tired of the half loaf. We're tired of politicians making compromises on their values that affect our livelihood. Now, listen, we talked about this community meeting. Well, we had one earlier when they were here. Now, if the benefits are so self-evident, why do they need to spend billions of dollars on lobbyists and trying to convince us that it's the greatest technology on earth? And if it's such a safe technology, if it's so safe, if it's so good, and it's not harmful to children, it's not harmful to the environment, why are they spending billions and trillions of dollars fighting federal regulations of the AI industry? We talk a lot about legal knowledge tonight. Well, I'm not a legal expert, but I do know my history. I'm a student of history, and history has shown us that corporations, large-scale corporations, don't care about us. They're interested in their short-term profit margins. So what we're here tonight to do, what I'm here tonight to do, is encourage all of you to use your voices, to speak out, to join the growing chorus of experts, journalists, and others who are opposed and speaking out about the dangers of AI, and I hope you will do so. Thank you.
Those are two hard speakers to follow. Dr. Jacob Logus, I'm at the 0100 of North Plum. I don't know if any of you are going to be answering some of these questions, but I do appreciate many of the questions that were asked of those here. I have some concerns about the noise limits and the pre-construction, post-construction idea. What's to stop these data centers from ramping up afterwards? Who's responsible for the enforcement, the, looking after these areas, making sure that it doesn't go above what was stated in the ordinance? What are the violations to those ordinance, those code violations? And are they sufficient for these, as they said, billionaires and trillionaires that are building these data centers? Because from what I see, violations are $500 per day, and that's barely even pocket change for many of these companies.
Yeah, Doctor, I would be prepared to address that question. The city has, first of all, any zoning violations that would go on, just like anything else, someone has a sign too big or whatever the issue may be, or a fence too high, it's reported to the city zoning officer. He does an investigation, and if it's determined that there's a problem, if the city determines to move forward with enforcement, there's two vehicles. One is going for the $500 daily fines in front of the district justice, with each day being a new violation. The other option the city has is, in the appropriate case, to ask for an injunction to shut down the use as long as the violation continues.
Okay. Going back to the noise ordinances as well, there was some talk about them not being applicable to manufacturing. Would that be the case? It was when we were all talking before.
Honestly, that's the noise ordinance. I can't, that one I cannot speak to. We would need Mr. Handwerker to address that one.
Okay. Air quality testing. Who does it? Why is it once a year and not more often? Many people have already said we have issues with pollution here already because we're in a basin. Obviously, as you all have said, we're preempted, but I think there's value in being able to collect that data and send them to the regulators at the state level. Are we able to include anything where we test more regularly?
Well, but it's still subject to the state parameters. If the state is not motivated to do anything about it, it wouldn't matter if we sent daily information.
Okay.
We can't set our own air quality standards for the city.
No, I understand that. Zoning violations as well, pursued through, I think you had said contract law, right?
No, I don't believe I said that, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I may have muddied the waters a little bit there, and I didn't mean to confuse anyone. I was just referring to there was a community benefits agreement last year, and the standards, there are standards that aren't identical, but they're similar to some of the things in the proposed zoning ordinance, and those would have to be enforced through the contract and through contract law, which is different than the zoning ordinance here.
I see. So, as was mentioned before, these companies have very deep pockets. What's to stop them from, making the city spend a lot of time in court, fighting these kinds of violations, hearing about how a resident came forward with a violation against one of the proposed data centers already. They took him to court. What's to stop them from doing that to the same people?
Well, the bedrock Pennsylvania law is that unless a use is illegal, every municipality must provide for it if the municipality is geographically big enough to contain it. So the speculation, which may be very true, but it's still a speculation because nothing's been built, nothing's been violated yet. The speculation that a landowner might not comply with a requirement in the future is not a sufficient basis for government action to prevent that use from having an attempt to operate.
Yeah, so the main thing I'm asking about is, are we able to not necessarily impose, but outline various different violations that are more in line with these kinds of land uses, with these kinds of landowners? Because again, $500 a day, hardly anything. It's barely a fee to, break the law.
I would hazard a guess. I'm the attorney who normally does the injunction requests in zoning violation cases. So I can speak to this with some general experience, even though nothing's happened here. I would think that if a problem arose of some magnitude, the city would not consider the fork in the road of just daily violations before the magisterial district justice. I would assume if there's a serious matter going on, the city would be moved to authorize litigation to shut down the use.
Yeah, so that gets to the, I guess, heart of the ordinance as it stands. There's still a lot of vague, language within it. There's very little specifics in terms of cures when violations occur. Of course, these could be things that are subject to other parts of the law, but I think it's relevant to make those things clear and also strengthen them as we can. On top of that, I wanted to also ask, there was this talk about adding another community meeting, and this idea that adding another community meeting might be a significant enough change to restart the process. So can I get any kind of description as to why these changes, as they are now, have not restarted the process? I mean, a single meeting is a significant enough change, but adding fencing requirements, generator testing, compliance, decommissioning, that was the other one that's, I feel, is fairly large. So could I get some clarity as to why those are not large enough?
All I can say is that those questions have been carefully considered, and we felt comfortable moving ahead on that basis. It's not a question of something falling through the cracks, sir. These issues were considered of whether we had to go back or not.
I'm not saying that they're falling through the cracks. What I'm saying is adding another meeting is too much, but these were not. It seems a little bit,
Mr. Albert, if I may, I think just to clarify, all the changes that are being proposed in this ordinance now have gone through the process, and that's why they're being presented, whereas a change that will happen tonight, such as the meeting, could be viewed as substantial. Is that correct?
That's exactly my
Just
view of the
clarity.
matter, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, I think that's all I have because there are many more. Thank you.
Linda Lewick Stoner, Princess Anne Drive. We live just 1,400 feet from the data center. Data Center 1, I should say. 2 is about to begin. And we're only about 400 feet from the electrical switch yard and substation, which are under construction expressly for the 2 adjacent data centers, 1 and 2, that are being built directly across from Costco. So imagine enduring extremely loud noise from a drill with an auger 4 to 5 feet wide, banging into the earth every 3 to 5 minutes, every day, except Sunday, from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. This incessant noise pollution is what we've been subject to for over 4 weeks now. Is anyone from the city staff coming out to have a listen, as we were told they would be monitoring the noise level to make sure the decibel level did not exceed the initial one with the heavy traffic? It does seem evident to us that the CBA negotiated by the previous administration perhaps is not being enforced. So I come before you to share a bit of the noise nightmare our neighborhood has been suffering with for the past month. My comments are meant to be a word of caution to those folks who are drafting and voting upon a new ordinance. We are told it will be similar to the CBA for the first 3 data centers. In our experience, it needs to be much stricter to protect those nearby, be they residents or workers or visitors. I ask that before voting on this ordinance, would you please take time to read a relevant and well-researched article that was just printed in the New York Times this past Monday, the 22nd. Though it deals with the noise level once the data centers are in operation, we speak from experience that the construction noise is downright awful and intolerable. The Times article explains that some of the data center noise emanates from these ultra-low frequency sound waves that somebody was talking about earlier on council. They're below the usual threshold that humans can hear. So people feel them physically as pressure fluctuations well within the body, okay? And the usual gauges that are used for determining noise levels are simply inadequate to assess sounds from data centers. So much more investigation and learning about the ramifications of the constant humming and vibrations caused by these data centers is needed before any action is taken. Public officials need to be proactive to protect their residents' quality of life. And then, if I may, I want to add a couple things. My husband and I, because we're so closely affected by this due to where we live, we've been regularly attending the meetings, and I looked through my file, and I can answer, I think, a couple of questions from counselors that came forth tonight on November 20th at a council special meeting. And I understand that you folks are new, so you would not have known this. They announced that there would be 164 to 176 generators, which would affect air quality due to emissions. But then, at a planning commission meeting, February 4th, they lowered the number of generators to 156, said they would be tested monthly for an hour on weekdays only. Do the math. That's almost 160. 40-hour work week, 4 weeks in the month. So those are the answers to some of the questions that you had based upon, like I said, the information received at previous meetings that you were unable to attend. Thank you.
Christopher Brooks, Virginia Avenue. So noise has come up quite often. I happen to be a sound expert. I've been an acoustics consultant for 35 years, and a lot of my work does have to do with both design and after the fact dealing with noise. So I'd like to address that. I looked at the proposed language addressing data center noise, and it is woefully inadequate. Mitigation is a vague weasel word. Ambient noise levels, as people have pointed out, this was interesting to me, ambient noise levels are a very poor way, a very poor metric for noise, because you can create a noise that is perceptible and annoying, even if it may be at a different frequency or a steady source. There are all sorts of ways that ambient noise. By the way, I think the noise code is very good in describing noise issues as being subjective, because that's really what counts, is what people experience. The time to address environmental issues such as noise, and I'm only talking about noise because that's what I know about, is during design, not pre-construction, as the proposal guidelines suggest. From the programming stage of design and through the entire design process. All these things are predictable. You can calculate how much noise something is going to generate. You can design ways to address that. And an appropriate criterion is no audible sound at the property line. And then nobody can say that they're being bothered. We don't wait to see if a building's going to fall down to see if it's okay. We have regulations for buildings, and they're supposed to stand up even if there's an earthquake. So it's design. Design is the time to address these issues, not after the fact. My long experience with noise issues has taught me that addressing noise after the fact is expensive, usually ineffective, generates hostility, mistrust, and lawsuits. Much of the expense is in delays and lawsuits, which benefit no one except the lawyers. I can help the city develop appropriately strict design guidelines for control of noise from data centers rather than after the fact. So please talk to me.
Taylor Raymond, 500 block of St. Joseph Street. So I'm going to start with two questions. The first one was, where was the second public notice published?
They were both published in LNP.
I can't find a record of the second notice being published in LNP. I searched it. I found record of the first, but not the second.
Okay, we have the verification from LNP that they published it.
Okay.
That's
I
part of
will-
the record.
All right. So then my second question, you said that the two data centers that are already in progress are not beholden to this new zoning ordinance in general. Is that correct?
To give you a simple general answer, that's right. Yes, this will impact future data centers.
Okay, so
If any.
the slide, I took a picture of this just to make sure I got the exact wording right. The slide that had to do with pending applications that said the two data centers already in process are grandfathered in with the central manufacturing, suburban manufacturing eligibility and held to all new performance standards effective on the ordinance date. Those two things do not sound like the same to me.
Okay. I would ask if you could comment on that, because we're a little bit further.
Yeah, we'll take a second look at the slide. If we miscommunicated, we will definitely fix that. I think you may remember right at the end of that slide, I did try to clarify that it's the performance standards in the community benefits agreement that will apply to the data center at Greenfield Road and at Harrisburg Pike. So I appreciate the question, but hopefully that clarifies the intent.
Okay. I came yesterday and spoke in public comment really quickly to request that you consider a moratorium or a curative amendment. I went home last night after the meeting and saw that Little Britain Township had done such a thing. It's possible. I think that you should do it. So you also spoke about not allowing a minimum lot area, or not being allowed to require a minimum lot area. Manor Township's zoning ordinance does. I understand that we don't have any parcels that are 30 acres, but we could use a smaller acreage and make that the minimum lot. And there is a building maximum height in Manor Township's ordinance of 40 feet. I think that we should do the same. there is at least one township with a zoning ordinance that requires closed loop water cooling for the data center. I think that we should absolutely make that explicitly part of the water portion of this zoning ordinance. Let me see. So things that were recommended by the county that haven't been included that I don't understand why. A separate definition for data center accessory use. Can you tell me what the decision was for leaving out a second definition for that?
It's another one of those that because we did not have the definition in the original one, it would be a substantial change.
Okay. So was the clarification or defining of good faith efforts not a significant change?
No, because good faith efforts was already in the ordinance. It was just clarifying it.
Okay. Let me see. There was also, I am going to skip over most of this because of time. Another thing, there was no photometric plan included, despite what the county had recommended.
Our photometric plan is required as part of the subdivision and land development ordinance, and it's typically not part of the zoning requirement.
Okay, thank you. I think that you should postpone a vote tonight. You should not vote on this tonight. You should instead pause any data centers. You should put a moratorium in place and allow this process to go further.
Good evening. My name is Bernard Cannon, First Street of Lancaster. It sounds like there's been a lot of thought and effort that went into this, so I want to thank Mr. Miller, Mr. Stoltzfus, Director, Mr. Solicitor. I really appreciate your comments and the effort that it seems that went into this today. One thing that was mentioned was, regarding air quality, regarding certain regulation bodies, that some of those things are up to the state. At this point, I don't trust the state to care about its constituents regarding data centers. Josh Shapiro is actively pushing data centers down our throats. And so I do appreciate the good versus perfect analogy, but I would rather my tax dollars are spent, maybe you don't want to spend your time doing this, but I would rather my tax dollars are spent in court fighting this. Ultimately, I do believe everyone here is here because they care and they want to lead to a better Lancaster County. But I cannot accept a grandfather clause, I'm sorry. I think that just goes against what everyone's integrity in this room stands for. Mr. Mayor, I voted for you. I haven't heard your comments on this, on the data centers at all, publicly or on social media. That is disappointing, I will say. It feels like we're being forced to take this, and that's not acceptable to me. And whether that's via my vote or me showing up to these meetings or however, you all need to understand that no one here accepts that. And that is not going to be this is only going to create more contention, more issues in the future. So that is something that, again, if that puts us in a situation where, we have to fight that legally, that's what I want my tax dollars going for. Thank you.
I'm Charles Godfrey, the 200 block of East New Street. And, this is a giant topic, obviously. My biggest thought is the next generation is never going to know an environment where everything is not cloud-driven, internet-driven, instant access to communication, instant access to information. And I'm worried about this. However, I recognize that if we don't get ahead of this problem now, we will not be in a situation to be able to champion our future. I appreciate what the city council has done so far in trying to make sure that we have some safeguards for the public put in place. Like many of you, I'm very concerned at what good faith effort really means when push comes to shove, when we come to inevitably come to loggerheads with companies over water usage and power usage, because the residents of Lancaster City and County have a right to affordable electricity and clean and accessible water. That being said, the data centers aren't going anywhere. It is inevitable that they are going to come here. If we were to kick this back 150 years ago, we would still be using kerosene lamps, and unless it's a novelty item, we all use electric. So I am very supportive of City Council getting ahead of this problem, making sure that we can champion the best use of data centers and how they're going to operate within the city, and also make sure that we can take best advantage of tax dollars that are made available. Thank you.
Darrell Legacy, Darrell Lagace, 100 block of North Mary. And I do appreciate all the work that went into this. I'm sure there are lots of people that aren't here that also worked on this. I realize this is a complicated topic, and I appreciate everybody's work on this. I think at a high level, we need to be realizing that we want to make it harder for data centers to come here. We don't want them to be clean when they are here. We don't want them to be less noisy when they are here. We do not want them here. I realize we cannot legally prohibit it. I realize we cannot legally prohibit them from coming. So instead, we should be doing everything we can to make it as hard as possible. And I think when it comes to a question of is this or is this not legally defensible, I think we should be going right up to that line and maybe even slightly over it. I don't think they're going to sue Lancaster, Pennsylvania to come here if we've made it clear that we do not want them here. I just don't believe that. Secondly, I think if you do decide to pass this tonight, and I am aware and I am sensitive to the idea that we have nothing right now. There's literally nothing if they wanted to come in. If you do decide to pass this tonight, I think we need to acknowledge that this is step one, not the last step. We need to be constantly revising this. We also need to be demanding CBAs with any future data centers above and beyond this. And they need to be harder than the existing one, because this is already basically the existing CBA. And I think the harder we make it, it's already happened in other towns where when the cities have made it difficult for data centers, they pull out and they go somewhere else. I'm not in favor of NIMBYism, but I think if every city did this, if every state did this, I think that we could make it very, very difficult for them, which is what I want us to do. I think three, someone spoke to this before, I think, but I would like to see something, maybe in a future iteration of this ordinance, that speaks to jobs. I want to hold them to account to the number of permanent jobs that they claim they're going to create. They talk a lot about construction jobs, which are almost never local in all of the other data centers that have been made. They almost always come from out of city or out of state. That's important. And most of the permanent jobs there are virtual. There's like 4 people that just go around and dust things in these data centers. They're not doing anything in them. I also think this is maybe an ongoing discussion, but I think we are all probably very curious, especially with the data centers that are already coming, how much tax value are they actually going to provide, right? We already know the risks and we know the negative things they're going to make. Are we talking a pittance? Are we talking, I know we said that there are no tax breaks that they're getting. I would be curious about that in some future meeting to see what we actually anticipate them to provide to the city and how much of a percentage of the budget is it, because I think we need to be making cost-benefit analysis about every single thing, not just data centers, but every single building that we put in this city. As far as energy, I find it frankly unbelievable that we can dictate the size of a fence required by a data center, but we cannot put anything about what percentage of the energy needs to be renewable. I just don't believe that. I just don't think that that's true. And if it is true, I think we consider ways to put it in and go right up to and maybe slightly beyond that legal line and dare them to sue us. I don't think they will. And then as far as noise, I think the noise ordinance defines, this is the existing noise ordinance, has nothing to do with this, but it is referenced in here. The existing noise ordinance basically says no one can create a noise disturbance. A noise disturbance is partially defined as any sound which, quote, annoys or disturbs a reasonable person of normal sensitivities. I would urge and maybe even ask every single person that lives anywhere near a data center, especially the two that are already being built, to call every single day and say, I am of reasonable and normal sensitivities and I am bothered by this hum from the data center. I think it's the only thing that we can do to make ourselves a nuisance to the city, who then hopefully will make themselves a nuisance to these data centers. I think we have to do everything we can to make it difficult for them. I think we have to be protesting the construction. I think we have to make it clear to them that we do not want them here. And then finally, lastly, this is not something that I'm necessarily expecting this moment, but I would love for the mayor to, and I voted for you as well, I would love for the mayor to consider a statement and a promise that the city will not use generative AI in their normal working positions.
Maria Selle, 433 Lancaster Avenue. And it's the first time I do this. So. I moved to Lancaster City 11 years ago, and I love Lancaster. I think it's the best place. I lived in New York, I lived in New Jersey, I lived in Italy. In fact, I'm from Italy originally, and I go back there every year. And last summer, I was asked several times whether I had any plan to move back now that I'm retired. And my answer was no, for several reasons, but one really that I felt strongly is how I felt about participation in the city, the democratic process, feeling that the institution and the elected official were open to share, to listen. And it's something I really appreciate that I don't see in the city that I visit when I go back every year. So I was very surprised also last summer when I was in Italy that I read on LMP about the decision of two data centers without anybody knowing anything, and had been approved. And so I thought, well, I go back and I have to get involved, and here I am. I gave the benefit of the doubt, I don't think there was any malice, probably just the people, what did I put here? Well, the lack of expertise and knowledge on the matter is something new, and it's complicated. And now we know maybe more about it because of all the discussions and all the what gets published and discussed. But I think that the ordinance, there was an ordinance made, draft or whatever, in October, and there have been several changes made that I think are significant. And I really appreciate that, but I think there are still changes that need to be made. First of all, and many people already mentioned, is the noise. The rules are vague, and it was mentioned, I think, Mr. Stolfutz, that maybe it's positive, a positive thing that are vague. But one thing that doesn't mention is vibrations. And when there was the slide, and these are the sounds that we cannot hear, perceive in our ear, but we may feel as like the New York Times that the other lady was mentioning, as a deep vibration of a bass drum shaking your core at a concert. And so these are things that I think in the ordinance doesn't mention at all that. Noise, very generic, very vague. Even though when the city planner was showing the slide of the feedback provided by the county council and the city zoning, whatever, city planning, the county council mentioned noise and vibration. So I don't know what happened to the vibration, why they're not appearing in the ordinance at all. And so that's one thing. The other thing, for example, the heat mitigation also, nothing was changed. It's very vague. There are no specific mechanism on the enforcement of this heat. So one thing, in fact, for me, and maybe you can tell me, and I'm new to this, I don't know, but I don't see anything about the money. Yes, there is a plan, a report is to be provided after 12 months for the noise, or after 90 days for the air pollution, or things like that. But what's the ongoing process of reviewing or monitoring and protect us from this environmental impact? So I think it's really important that you take a pause and make this ordinance better. As somebody was saying, probably we cannot be without it. I mean, we have to have something, but let's make it stronger as much as possible. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hoffman, 200 block of East Ross. I confess, actually, that I only found out about this hearing this morning. So I was wondering if any of you have been to a data center or visited one before you came up with this? Yeah, okay, good. I'm not a noise expert, but it did seem to me that the noise section was inadequate. There's a lot of vague terms like neutral impact, normal operations, minimize noise. And then it also calls for this noise study within a year. That seemed like way too long of a time. Maybe 6 months would be better. I don't know if that's a major change or a minor change. And I've also looked at model AI data center language, and it's a lot more specific. It uses a lot of terms I don't understand, and I don't know why ours is so general. Same with the annual air testing. I don't know if that's supposed to be like an average of the pollution, which would hide spikes in bad pollution. And one way, I think, to address that would be to prohibit diesel generator backup. That is the most polluting energy, and you could require battery backup. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I've been coming here for about I think a year and a half, and I still don't get this right. I'm Robert Potter of the 100 block of Franklin, North Franklin. I don't know. Anyways, that's about as funny as I want to be tonight. I am so tired of coming up in here and telling y'all to stop messing up the future of Lancaster City. Especially the people that I voted for. It is so tiring. Everyone here has talked to y'all to death about statistics. I won't. I don't care about it. Because through and through, this is the tool of fascism. And you're going to look at your papers, but it's true. There's no benefit to this at all, at least that they want to use. In the same typical fashion of all fascist tools, it is going to benefit the people that are now trillionaires rather than the people that work 40 hours a week making pennies and dimes. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And I'm not even done, and that's my applause. It is so tiring. Not a person up here is under 30, and yet I'm 26, and I got to keep coming up here and telling y'all, this is messing up the future. This isn't something that's and you go and laugh, but it's not even, I got kids in my classes that can't even spell, and they go and confront ChatGPT, and it's going to get it wrong, drain your water, and what else about it? Really, what else about it? And another thing no one has talked about since they've been up here, and I'm mixed. It's a lot of white people up in here. This disproportionately affects black people. And you know how I know? Go look. Go look. I can pull up an ad right now, a gambling ad that has a black woman standing in front of the camera with cleaning supplies, talking about how it changed her life. Did this? It ain't even real. And you're going to sit here and tell me that this is supposed to be for my benefit. All you are doing is inciting violence when you put this in this in this vicinity. Because there's going to be, if we tolerate it, and you said earlier about kicking the can down further down the road, whoever said it, this is going to kick the can further down so that can get kicked into the fire. It is ridiculous. This don't help nobody at all, especially black people. Ask the people in Memphis, ask the trillionaires, is ridiculous. These people are dying of asthma. They're dying of things that you are completely and utterly preventable. And you want to sit here and talk about, oh, you won't hear it, you won't breathe it, you won't see it. Then it looks like we don't need it, right? I'm confused. I really am. And like I said, no one up here is going to be even concerned about it in 30 years. You'll get your pension, you'll get your grace, you'll get your home in Florida. We're in the age of Trumpism. Don't act like the branches aren't cut from the top. You talking about the state regulating and stuff? Fetterman, where's he at? Hey, what's his face? The old guy. Which one, right? The one making the most money. He's a senator. He just went into the hospital for 8 days. McConnell. That is, come on. Y'all are playing around this, and you know there's no one that's going to check it, because look who's in charge. This is prime time to do some, I'm really censoring my words. This is prime time to do something that's going to mess up a generation that already can't spell. And ask me how I know. And I know you aren't in the classrooms, because I am. It's always a bunch of suits walking up in here trying to change everyone else's lives. What is the people that, I've been up for 14 hours. I probably walked by this whole back row stinking because I was out here educating children and telling them, boo that Tesla. Delete that ChatGPT off your phone. Go drink the clean water that you can that don't got microplastics in it. Get a filter for your water. My hot water just got turned back on, thank God. I showered for 2.5 weeks with cold water. I sure felt good, but that's the type of energy you don't want for people that don't like your AI. You want them dumb and stupid and complacent, which is why you're pushing it down our throats. In the age of, I'm sorry if this is a word that triggers you, but rape culture, because who's the president? Don't act like it. Let's be coy. We're all adults here. I get to censor myself for hours at a time around kids, and they still get the deal. You people are a letdown.
Can we please keep decorum in the chambers? Can we please keep decorum in the chambers?
Hell yeah. Yeah, hell yeah. Zach Morrow, 800 block of Wallbank. First of all, I agree with that dude and the guy dressed like Riddler, Robert Potter, and the Riddler over there. The fact is, that's my dog right now. The fact is, these companies that are going to come in and build these data centers, they're going to eat every fine, they're going to eat every penalty and every legal blockade you throw at them with tons and tons of money. Okay? We're here to frustrate their attempts to build here indefinitely. Any roadblock is good. You know what I mean? And kicking the decision down to an unelected zoning board seems like an abdication of democratic responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Also, I do think it's pretty funny that your definition of data center sounded like it was come up by ChatGPT, man. That's hilarious. All right, I'm out.
Hi, I'm Candace Roper. I live on the 400 block of West James Street. I have lived here for 35 years. I moved here when I was 29. I have a couple of specific points of things that I haven't seen anywhere, one of which is the facial recognition cameras that are going up on these places, which is worrisome. I have friends in Lowell, Mass. who are experiencing all the effects of a data center that went in. I don't believe it's a particularly large one, but they have headaches. First of all, it's hideous. They have facial recognition cameras recording every car passing by. Some of them, apparently in the neighborhood, have the cameras pointed at their houses. So that's one thing I didn't see anything about. I don't know whether you addressed that and I missed it, but
facial recognition is like a gruesome tool of what's happening in this country. The other thing, a specific point, is that the water authority in the city, which is the mayor, I believe, my understanding from when I was on the school board and the city wanted to build a new water tower was that the city has to supply water to anyone in the county building. So I wonder if a water cooling data center applies, whether we will then have to start building more water towers and taking more water than we should to supply them. My understanding, the school board held the legal hearings for the water tower, so I know a lot about this. And like all of you who didn't see this data center thing coming, the school board did not see defending a water tower to angry residents either. So I get that none of you are experts on data centers. None of us are either, although I think a lot of people have done a lot of reading. I have read an awful lot about how cities capitulating by accepting community benefits is a huge mistake. And I love this city, and I would really like to feel that this city is at the front lines of fighting what's happening in this country. It's hard for me not to see this as a microcosm of what's happening, which is techno-fascism. And I think I listen a lot to the academic experts on totalitarianism and all of what's happening, and this tech piece of it is a huge piece of it. I think it's pretty clear, it's like the elephant in the room, that there is nothing good about data centers for communities, for the people. I feel like we're throwing our children under the bus by letting this happen. I mean, I know at least one of you has a small child, and I still feel like I am a defender and a voice for our kids. So I guess I'm asking you to table this. I know how important it is to get it done, and I understand the piece about not having anything now in place, and I get all of the ramifications of that. But I really would urge you to step back and look years in the future and resist more in whatever ways you can. That's it. Thank you.
My name is Henry Tober, 300 block of College Avenue. I'm not a very good speaker, so I apologize ahead of time of that if I ramble a bit. I find myself coming to these meetings over more and more as I've gotten older. From what I understand, the data centers, the two that are already being talked about, they will use somewhere, I've seen numbers between 2 to 5 to 2 to 8 times as much electricity as the entire city of Lancaster uses in a year. So we're already talking about a very potential strain on the existing infrastructure. I understand that there are some talk about trying to get the companies to pay for some changes, but in the end, the residents are going to wind up eating the cost at higher rates. We're already looking at, now I know it's supposed to be net neutral for the first year, but we're looking at our reassessments of our properties. My house went up 247%. So even with the lowering of the millage, I'm looking at paying probably about another $4,000 to $5,000 in taxes. So then I hear about the electricity potential with the data centers. I use AI with my business, so I'm not negative to AI. It's going to be there. The question is, what does Lancaster do with what's coming? I think we need to have something in place. I don't know if this is it, but we got 2 data centers before we even, as a population, as the citizens knew what was going on. So I don't think I want to see 16 more pop up, because this is saying, yeah, we're ready, we're going to limit it, but we're definitely going to say we are open to more. Talking about AI, my battery's low, so I had to turn my phone off a little bit. But according to what Microsoft's Copilot, who I nicknamed Liar, says, cities can actually pass an amendment to the zoning ordinance that removes data center or electronic data processing warehouse as permitted use in all zoning districts. And while developers can challenge if the ban is arbitrary or discriminatory, but courts usually uphold zoning changes if the city shows rational planning reasons, such as infrastructure strain or environmental impact. If the 2 data centers are built and we do show a substantial strain on the electrical grid, I think that would be a very valid reason to say no to further data centers. Also, of course, my phone's being stupid. In regards to what the solicitor had said about not hearing of any cities contesting it, there was Dayton, Ohio. In June 2026, the Dayton City Commission passed a zoning change that banned data centers outright. Monterey Park, California, in March 2026, the City Council placed a ban before voters. In June 2026, residents voted for permanently banning data centers in the city. Holyoke, Massachusetts, in June 2026, the City Council approved sweeping zoning changes that prohibited new data centers. Spokane, Washington, in June 2026, the City Council imposed a 1-year moratorium on new data centers. Seattle, Washington, in June 2026, the City Council unanimously passed a 1-year emergency moratorium on large data centers. El Dorado, Kansas, in June 2026, residents submitted a petition to ban data centers and battery storage systems. St. Charles, Missouri, local officials enacted an outright ban on data center construction in 2026 following intense community opposition. I have been here for over 2 hours. I have not heard one person from the audience say that they were in support of the data centers. Also, in regards to the city not being able to say that that you can't deny a business to be there. We're currently looking at 2 data centers in the city. Isn't 2 enough? Isn't that enough of a reason to say we're going to stop more from coming in? Just outright say we're going to be stopping at 2. There's nothing that says that we have to have 18 because we have 16 more zones that qualify for it. I think we have a right to ask for the government to stand up for what we're saying. I don't hear enough people saying that they're for data centers. It's going to be there. We can't avoid what's going to happen countrywide, but we should have some say in what happens with the city. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Very quickly before the next public comment, Mr. Albert, would you be able to speak to cities in Pennsylvania's ability to potentially ban a data center, and if that is possible? I know we've explored that conversation last year when initially proposed. And also I know the comments, just a few of the comments around insinuating a vote for data centers this evening. If you can just clarify what is actually on the table for this evening, just want to level set there a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 things. First of all, Mr. Tober, I thank you for your comments, and they're very thoughtful. But I would mention to council that the places cited were Washington, Ohio, California. Land use law is different in every state. The eastern states have some different traditions of land use than the western states do. These things are not federal for the most part, except for some fair housing stuff. Pennsylvania is something of is something of an extreme state in landowners' rights in terms of zoning law, and has always been this way. And I stand by every word I said that we can't ban data centers. If other states can do it, that's fine. We cannot do it here. I could not advise council in good faith that we could ban data centers. Now, sir, this is not a conversation. Thank you for your comments. The other thing, Mayor, to respond to your comments is that at this moment, we have no law about data centers. Someone could show up tomorrow and do something. What this ordinance does is to regulate data centers. And to respond to some of the comments that have been made, if at some later point, perhaps in the context of the comprehensive zoning or revision of the zoning ordinance, if we wanted to add some additional restrictions based on experience, we can always do that. But right now, we have nothing.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Jackson. I'm probably the only person here not from Lancaster City. So my question is just about that. From what I understand, heat islands can go up to a 6-mile radius, and noise and the vibrations can travel up to 2 miles. The light, which hasn't been discussed at all, is also a disturbance. To the north, you have Manheim Township. To the south, you have Manor Township, which is where I'm from. You have Lancaster Township. Right behind Harrisburg Pike, that location, you have School Lane Hills, you have Country Day School. To the east, you have Lampeter Strasburg. So my question is specifically about, were all these other townships included in the decisions being made for these 2 data centers that happen to reside in Lancaster City?
I can answer that question. All the notice requirements of the municipality's planning code were complied with. Those would not have input on a matter such as this. Am I correct? Yeah.
I can't hear you.
It's simply
So
a
you're
text amendment.
saying that Manor Township, everybody was involved in making the decisions that you are presenting today?
No, they were not involved. This
Well,
is a
they
city matter.
impact me directly, and they impact, like I said, Manheim Township directly, and Lampeter, and Lancaster Township, and Manor Township. So you're making decisions.
Yep. Ma'am, I'm not sure if this is helpful or not, but just wanted to reiterate that the process as a whole is governed by the Municipal Planning Code, which is state law, and as part of that state law, that's where the county review requirement comes in. So those jurisdictions, in a way, are represented by the county through this process.
Okay. I guess I just don't understand when I talk to my neighbors, they don't even know this is going on. So it's sort of isolated into this sector of Lancaster City. What's that? City residents didn't even know. Okay. And then just real quickly, as far as light is concerned, the amount of light that will be, illuminated from these data centers certainly will impact migration, just everything as far as wildlife. They depend on light to be able to navigate through their own lives. How are you mitigating light? Is it just this? I don't even see the word light in this. I have the actual contract that's red-lined, black-lined, blue-lined, whatever you want to call it. How are you mitigating light?
Don't we have light in the Saldo?
Yes, so light is regulated in the zoning ordinance. It's regulated in our subdivision and land development ordinance, and we require that all facilities meet the dark sky ordinance requirement, or the dark sky requirements that are like a national standard.
You said the dark side requirements?
Yes, it's a
Sky.
national standard.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Joshua Ray, REA, 400 block South Ann Street. Thank you to council for considering this ordinance and to all of my neighbors for voicing your concerns. I agree with what most folks have said here today. So I'll be brief because many folks have articulated many of my concerns really well already. I just wanted to encourage council that if you do adopt this ordinance today or after a second read or whatever, that you along with that maybe reconsider the noise ordinance or be proactive about tightening or strengthening the noise ordinance alongside this ordinance. To me, parts of the noise ordinance feel vague. I find the city to be rather noisy, and I've lived in several major cities much larger than Lancaster that are, this is the loudest place I've lived. For one part that's particularly troublesome to me is the noise ordinance or noise disturbance being defined as anything that annoys or disturbs a reasonable person of normal sensitivities. I have worries about who gets to decide who a normal person is or what normal sensitivities are. And I think that that could be interpreted in ways that could disadvantage some folks or be read as ableist. And again, as some people have pointed out, I think that that's a little vague and just opens the door to some potential issues. So I would ask the city to maybe, again, be proactive about looking at that ordinance alongside this one. And I'd also echo my friend Daryl's call to commit to the city not using generative AI given its issues with relying on stolen work, exploitative labor from third world countries, and its harmful effects on linguistic diversity. And I'd be happy to provide peer-reviewed studies on any of those effects if people are interested in them.
My name is Matthew LaBelle. I'm from the 300 block of Beaver Street. I have been in Lancaster County for 6 years. I started attending Millersville University in 2020, and I've been living in the city for the past 2 years. I recently just started renting a house here, and I'd like to start my family here. But all of this makes me disgusted. I don't want to start a family where somewhere I'm embarrassed to tell my family how our city council's acting, how the people I elected into government are acting. I don't want to stay here. I want to move. And I shouldn't feel like that somewhere where I just put my feet down to set my roots up because this is where I want to be home. I did not come here to study environmental biology for this to be the new front line. I came to solve the problem you guys already have, not start new ones. So fix it. Thank you.
So I'm just going to get right to it. If you need to refer to me, you can refer to me as X. For you two right here, do the city planners know what kind of technology these data centers are going to be enabling? Specifically, what kind of technology, or they're just data centers, what are they going to be doing? Have you asked those questions to the developers?
I don't know if we can answer that question. I don't know if you're asking a land use question, sir.
I'm asking what technology the data centers are going to be enabling. What is the use case for the technology?
I don't think that's a land use question, sir.
I'm aware it's not.
Well, then it's outside of what their job is.
No, it is not. I'm asking you what type of tech. This just shows how incompetent and how uneducated all of you are on data centers and the technology. This proves it. So right here, I'm asking you what kind of technology. Are we talking about the mass surveillance that's enabling the fascist regime? What is the tech? Do you know?
You don't need to answer that question. That's not material to the job that council has tonight.
Well, then I'll shift to Jamie. As a fellow Latino, as a fellow Boricua, el que no ama su patria, no ama su madre. I know you know that one.
You can make comments, sir, but council does not have an obligation to respond.
I am aware.
Okay.
So it's pretty obvious to everyone here, and I hope to the entire council, that all of these AI data centers have a hand in the mass surveillance of all of us, and has been made to completely remove people from their families, cause destruction, murder, and rape inside these detention centers. All of these things are connected. All of these things are linked. If you want to protect the Latino community here in Lancaster, in Pennsylvania, across the country, across the world, then you should know what type of tech that you're bringing into this city that is going to be just enabling that and creating an absolute beast.
We will have decorum.
We're trying to keep order
Yeah,
here.
we will have decorum in the
Comments?
chambers.
It's up here.
I'm fine with listening to what they have to say as a part of the city.
What?
Excuse me,
You're not.
we have public
Then I'll say it.
Sir,
There were a bunch of minors at Lancaster City Day School, at Lancaster Day School. I'm allowed to speak.
Well, yeah, but you both can't speak at the same time.
All right, well, do you hear me now?
Well, if that gentleman will just, not speak and you speak, then we're fine.
So at Lancaster Country Day, there was AI generated nudes of a student. I don't know the exact details. I am sorry, that is awful. And that's the type of stuff that these places create. It's the type of environment that it enables. And by the way, we kept talking about like sound and frequency. I'm no expert in that, but the actual physics behind it is called cymatic frequencies. I encourage you all to look up cymatic frequencies and its effect on physical matter. Considering that all of us in this room are 50 to 60% water, we are heavily affected by these frequencies that cannot be seen. And also, all this talk about state regulation, about the environmental effects. I'm guessing most of those regulations and those standards come down from the federal government, correct?
Some are federal, some are state, sir.
But they are mostly federal.
I don't know how to respond to mostly.
Yes, they are. So we're expected to trust the same murderous, rapist, fascist regime to create the regulations for these data centers that are spying on all of us? That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And just one last thing. The sociological and environmental repercussions of this narrative that's being promoted by the city and many cities across the country is a prime example of choosing profit over people. We've already been receiving text alerts from the city, if I'm not mistaken, about drought conditions and limit your water use. Are any of you aware of how much water that runs through these data centers is lost to evaporation? I would appreciate a response, possibly. Are you aware of how much water is lost to evaporation at these data centers?
Sir, I can speak to the 2 data center sites that have been planned at Greenfield and Harrisburg. The design at those particular sites utilize a closed water loop system, and we do have clear statistics on what the water volume usage will be, and the data center developer agreed to not exceed those thresholds as part of the community benefits agreement. So it depends really on the design of the facility. There are some facilities that use an inordinate amount of water. That is not intended to be the case. It is not part of the design of these 2 facilities in Lancaster.
So the closed loop technology that you're talking about, can you explain that a little further? Is that the liquid cooling system that runs through the walls?
I would need an engineer here to give you all of the details, but
I would hope you would have done that research if you cared about this city.
We have enlisted the help of a lot of different experts to help us with the decision making.
So I already know the answer to that. It's 85%. You can look this up anywhere. 85% of the water that goes into these data centers, even within a closed loop, is lost to evaporation. That means it cannot return back into our water system. Now, if we're talking about commercial or residential, only 15% is lost to evaporation. Again, when we've already been getting texts about limiting our water usage, this is insane to me that this decision is just being passed along simply because the gentleman down there is scared of a lawsuit. Because if I remember correctly, Lancaster City was the core of the resistance, was the core of creating this country. By the way, land acknowledgement to the Susquehannock. And honestly, I'll end it with a term from the Dakota tribes, the Lakota tribes, Mini Wakoni. Water is life. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand yourself.
My name is Kaz Bitzer. I am a former resident of the city. I do live right outside the city in one of the areas that's right outside of Greenfield area, so I live in the CV area. But my partner and I, we live together, we would love to move back to the city. We would love to move back into a place that has helped me thrive and that is thriving now. But with these potential data centers, we won't even consider a house with a Lancaster address because all the water will get sucked up and all the air will get polluted and the noise. And thank you to whoever said that the language used in this is very ableist and vague to say normal sensibilities. We have a very large neurodivergent population in this area. I know because I'm one of them. And to hear normal sensibilities, that's not me. So will that be taken into consideration if someone like me had a complaint? Because I'm not normal, and they wouldn't be normal. So that's all I have to say. People will not move into the area, and people will be leaving the area, as someone else pointed out, because we do not want this in our area. Thank you.
Wow, what a night. Frank Arcolio, 200 block of Old Trinity Place in Old Town. I have about 3 hours worth of things to say today, but I'm not going to do it. So just a few things. First, you know, I'm against data centers to begin with, and a large reason for that is because they support AI, and without regulations on AI, it is capable of some of the worst things in the world. Mass surveillance, automated, uncontrolled warfare, like targeting the kids school in Iran. And it's also, its greatest benefit is touted as losing millions of jobs. So I'm not particularly a fan of AI, and I'm not particularly a fan of the data centers that run AI. But apart from that, you know, if we're going to try to control this, I would prefer to have conditional use rather than special exception. And the reason for that is, as far as I could tell, I don't believe that there are specific like educational and experience requirements for zoning hearing board members. I think that what I read on the website was they have to be a resident of the city and not have a city job. But I'm not disparaging anyone who is or has ever been on the zoning hearing board. but I can imagine, you know, three people fighting the kinds of legal onslaught that you guys are talking about in order to motivate us to adopt this ordinance. I could imagine that pressure being brought on the zoning hearing board as opposed to the city council, which I think has greater standing and greater stature in order to resist that kinds of pressure. And I do understand that if a development meets the zoning requirements, they must be approved, whether it's by the zoning hearing board or by the city council. The problem is that the zoning amendment has a number of vague and I think subjectively determined or determinable aspects to it, like what counts as good faith. Well, it says the city can determine what it thinks good faith is, but I don't know that that's gonna hold up. The financial security, there's no provision for determining what is really an adequate financial security in the ordinance. So what counts as enough security, again, is a matter of subjective belief. And I would rather have the city council determine that than the zoning hearing board. Heat island and heat effects, well, that's not well defined in the ordinance also, and that is another one where is the heat mitigation plan mitigated to what level, and is that level enough, and how do you determine what that level is? I think these things are subjective, and I think they're judgment calls, and as I said, I would much prefer that judgment be in the hands of our elected representatives as opposed to the zoning hearing board. I think there are some monitoring and enforcement issues here. I understand the fines and the injunctions. I think that there should be better monitoring and enforcement. And then finally, I am asking you to make changes to this amendment, and you are telling me that those changes can't be made. Not a little bit can be made in order to not start the process all over again and put us another 4 months down the road. It's amazing to me that that can be the position that you guys take, or that the legal advisor takes, when from the first reading in October to tonight, you have eliminated an entire zone as being applicable to data centers. There were 195 properties that were potentially available to data center development. This change, this non-substantial change, removed 179 of them. That's not major. That's just a minor little clarification. That's a typo. I think not.
Sir, I'm prepared to respond to that right now, and it's a good point. The reason that is not considered a substantial change is because it's reducing the impact of the ordinance from all of those properties to just the 16 properties. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought I would make that point for you.
Well, okay, thank you. I have only two more things to say. One is that something that was introduced as part of the good faith language was the possibility of on-premises energy generation. Now, if for some reason some of those properties, which look to be very close to the transmission lines, but if in fact any of those properties are not able to connect to the grid, I think we should never, ever, ever allow them to bring their own energy. They would be most likely putting in natural gas-fired electricity generation. We don't need more natural gas power plants. They could be putting in methane power plants like exists in the data center in Memphis or near Memphis in North Mississippi that Elon Musk is running. We should never, ever, ever allow data centers to bring their own power because it will not be clean power. So, okay, so you don't want to take any of my suggestions because it's going to start the process over. So I'm going to take refuge in my favorite paragraph of this entire zoning amendment. It's paragraph 6B. And let me read it to you. A data center that has made a complete application for city permits or for land development approval when required prior to, and then there's some empty date, shall be a permitted use in CM district and SM district, and subject to the provisions of this ordinance, effective as of date. That tells me that this doesn't grandfather them in away from this ordinance. This wording says that it puts them subject to this ordinance. And I don't know whether that's what you intended or not, but it's here. It's in the words. And if you change those words to mean exactly the opposite of what it says, that is a substantial change to this zoning amendment and should never be allowed to be approved on second reading. And I think there could be certain legal challenges to being able to make that change if you choose to do it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jerry Clace. I live in East Hempfield. And the reason I'm so interested in this is because the data center on Harrisburg Pike is about 3 hours as the crow flies from my house. So I've done a lot of, I'm sorry? I'm sorry, 3 miles from the data center on Harrisburg Pike. So I'm quite interested in this. And I want to talk specifically about energy. My first question is, I know solar energy cannot power a data center. My question is, though, these two data centers each have about 20 acres of prime real estate on their roof. Why can't it be mandated that when they build a data center, or any warehouse for that matter, that it be designed and constructed so it can accommodate solar panels, which can feed electricity back into the grid? I can't supply the data center, but it certainly can supply a lot of energy for the grid. The second one is I'd like to say, gee, I wish you could use nuclear fusion. But as the old saying goes, nuclear fusion is only 5 years away, and it's been 5 years away for about 50 years. So that's not a practical solution. But specialized nuclear fission is a solution. You can put a specialized nuclear fission facility on a site that can generate more than enough power to generate that AI center and feed electricity back into the grid. Because I guarantee you, my energy and everybody's energy, electricity cost is going to go up over the next 2 years. That's just a fact. I don't care what anybody says, it's going to go up. And the science is that the technology is developing so fast that nuclear fusion is going to be a reality. It's coming. But nuclear fission is here. Why aren't we looking at that? Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we putting solar panels on top of these buildings? And also, I want to thank you guys. I think the city got off to a very slow start, but I think you've made a nice recovery and you're doing some good work, and I appreciate everything you've done. And I hope we come to the right conclusion, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other citizen comment? Hearing none, I turn this back over to the President of Council for further
Council
action.
President, if I may.
Yes.
Can we get clarification on the line 6B piece that Mr. Arcolio brought up?
Certainly, and I'm happy to double check or triple check this language with our solicitor, but this is the intended language, and it is meant to say that that the two data centers that have already been part of a contractual agreement with the city are basically exempt from this ordinance.
As was defined in the CBA.
Right. We have the contractual agreement with the data center's developer, and they're bound to those standards, not the standards that are in this ordinance.
It does say, and subject to the provisions of this ordinance effective as of date. So I'm just feeling a little confused.
The date would be the date of adoption, is my understanding. Mr. Albert, is that how you read it as well? Yeah. So the date was left blank because we did not know when the city council would choose to adopt the ordinance. That has to be filled in.
And the two prior data centers were negotiated prior to today's date.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the subject of the community benefits agreement that you were referring to earlier.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Council President, if I may, it's still confusing though, Director Delfs, because it wasn't meant to say shall be a permitted use in CM district and SM district and not subject to the provisions of this ordinance. Because if it says that it's subject to the provisions of this ordinance, then it's subject to the provisions of this ordinance.
Again, I can only say that this was checked and provided by our solicitor. We can again ask questions if we need to.
But I mean, what
I'm
are
not
we?
sure what else to say here. I can tell you the intent of the language.
Okay, but I guess I'm asking, if we have a second reading and we're approving this text amendment, what are we approving? We're improving I'm assuming that maybe this is a question for our solicitor.
Well, they have the most current file in front of them, so perhaps the planning department would be the better person to ask.
Well, I need.
Yes, I can. As I said a few times, I can tell you that is the intent of the language. That's how I'm reading it. Again, that this is meant to exclude the two sites that have been part of the CBA.
I understand the intent.
Yes.
But that's not what it says in the actual draft, is my concern. So we're not approving the intent of the language in this draft. We're improving the language in this draft. So this is not like a gotcha moment for me. This is I want to know what we're expected to vote on.
Yes, I understand the question. I'm not sure what else I can provide at this point.
Depending on how this reads, should we offer an amendment before moving it forward?
Excuse me, Mr. President, if may I?
Yes, Councilor Muchan.
Excuse me. Right now, we have, am I right? We have nothing to control, nothing to have guidance for the data centers. That's what we're doing. Trying to implement any kind of controls or guidance to go through this.
Yes, I believe your question
Okay.
is, right now, we currently have no restrictions towards future data centers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I understand that. I feel like I need clarity on this question.
Sorry, I'm trying to go back through my notes to see if there's any comments on that.
The notice that was advertised provides that the ordinance shall not apply to data center applicants that submitted complete land development applications prior to the date of the public hearing. So from the notice, it indicates that they would not apply to the two data centers that are already in progress.
But we're not approving the notice. We're approving the text
I'm
in
giving you
this.
the best answer I can.
Okay. Well, I would need a better answer than that.
Just for clarity, because I can see where some of the confusion may be. So I understand that under, and pardon me, Councilor Stoltzfus, complete application for city permits or for land development approval when required prior to, assuming this date, shall be permitted to use CM district and SM district, which would be the case prior to this. Mr. Albert, maybe I think the line that's causing confusion is and subject to the provisions of this ordinance. Is that discussing the like the performance standards? Is that what the provisions could be alluding to, and not? Because to me, this basically.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. So if I'm
I think maybe we should have like filled in that second date as subject to the ordinance that was effective on 7/23/2013, because that's the current date that the zoning ordinance was effective.
Okay.
So the first one would be the new date. The second blank would be the effective date of our current existing ordinance.
Okay.
But it says
Yeah. So my understanding of this is that it permits any data center applications prior to the dates, which are today or whenever council approves it or were to approve it, shall be permitted to use the districts, because the district is changing in the new ordinance, but subject to the provisions of the ordinance. Is we have indicated prior that moving forward, they're still required to meet the performance standards. Am I understanding that
Well,
correctly?
they're subject to the performance standards in the CBAs, I understand, yeah.
But this says this ordinance, so I'm getting more confused, I think.
My understanding as well was that the ordinance has it read in that section was that anything before this date blank was not affected by the ordinance. That's how I read the ordinance prior to the meeting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's I'm not sure if the confusion is coming from the blank date primarily. Okay. No. I'm asking because I understand the intent of the sentence, so that's why I want to make sure that I understand where the concern is.
Yeah, I think the confusion is coming from that second line. So I think there's an understanding that shall be permitted to use in CM district and SM district, period. I think we understand that piece. I think the part that needs further clarification is and is subject to the provisions of the ordinance effective this date or the date. What does the subject to the provisions of this ordinance mean?
So from a procedural standpoint, we do have our legislative agenda next on the agenda. Mr. Harris, I believe that we would have to take up Administrative Bill 10, and then there will be discussion from council on next steps.
Mr. President, yes, we can take that up, and then there would be discussion at that point.
So that brings us to our administrative agenda, Administrative Bill 10, number 10, 2025. Mr. Harris, if you'll please read it into the record.
Yes, Mr. President. An ordinance of the Lancaster City Council amending Chapter 300 of the Code of the City of Lancaster, zoning, to recognize computed data centers as a use requiring special regulation, providing definitions, allowing data centers by special exception in the SM zones, establishing performance standards, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances and pending applications, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date of the ordinance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Councilors, we now have a motion and a second. We will now discuss the ordinance as currently written. Are there any council comments?
Council President, if I may, I'm sorry, unless there's clarity on that last piece, I don't know what I'm voting to approve. So at this point, I'm I'm not in favor of moving forward unless we get clarity.
Counselor Stolzfus, just for my clarity from a parliamentary procedure standpoint, are you suggesting through motion that we table this to a later date, or?
I mean, unless there's clarity that somehow staff has that we haven't heard yet, I would make a motion to table to our next council meeting.
Second.
A motion has been made. A motion has been made and seconded. Do we have any council comments on the motion?
Council President, if I may.
Yes, Councilor Gastineau.
For me, it's as simple as a one-word addition. It would be "and not subject to the provisions of this ordinance," just for clarity's sake. I do think that we should not delay this too much longer, because I am nervous about the risks that are posed as we're unprotected from future data centers. So I think as long as we would consider this at our next meeting with, the solicitor's input and city staff's input, I think that would be pertinent to do sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councilor Gastineau.
Council President.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
I am also a little bit confused by this, and I guess my question is like, I want this to move forward as quickly as possible to put in protections, because we currently don't have any in place. So I understand the urgency here, but it seems like the language is a little bit up for debate or confusing, but it seems like a simple addition of "not subject to the provisions of this ordinance effective as of the date that this were to pass" would fix this, because the other two data centers are governed by the community benefit agreement already. So I think that the inclusion of that simple "not" would clarify the language and make me comfortable moving forward with this. But we've heard earlier that relatively simple additions or edits to the text could trigger other issues, and I wonder what your perspective is on that.
Given that that would make this congruent with the way it was advertised, I'm comfortable with that, with the support, assuming the staff is all right with that.
Yeah, so this was actually not, originally the thought was that it would be added into the actual text that's going to be in the zoning ordinance. This is just part, and it's not, it's just part of the actual bill before you. So it's not in the zoning ordinance itself. So the language that's in section 1 and is in section.
I believe we're looking at section.
Sorry, I'm looking at the old draft to get my notes together.
That's the bill. Good motion.
So it's in the resolution, but it's not part of the zoning amendment. It wasn't in the first draft. It's not part of the second draft. It's just in the bill in front of you. Does that make sense?
It's not. The subsection G that we're talking about is not part of the ordinance.
It is not part of the ordinance amendment. It's part of the bill.
So, excuse me, Council President, I guess for clarity then, I'm assuming and maybe Mr. Harris can clarify, there can be a motion to make an edit to that line if we wanted to add in not subject to the provisions of this ordinance if there's further clarity needed.
So, wait, it's just a matter of clarity then. It's just in the supporting resolution. It's not in the text of the ordinance, which is what we're here about tonight.
Correct. So in the resolution or the ordinance, the bill that's in front of you, it's for a text amendment for the ordinance. And section 3, section 2, section 3 all relate to what would actually be changed in the document of the zoning ordinance. That's the part that the county would have comment on and that the city planning commission would have comment on. The actual bill itself is where that repealer is.
So it's less
not
of
part of the technical zoning amendment. It's part of the bill.
So it would be less disruptive to the process if we inserted a simple "not" to clarify the language.
Correct.
And
Yes.
and that's not that removes my concern because it's not changing what the new ordinance would be.
And that was not, and that one of the reasons that it wasn't part of the ordinance was because it was not reviewed by either the county or the city planning commissions. That's why we had it as part of the bill versus the actual amendment.
And by the way, just to clarify, the municipality's planning code hearing is closed, and the court reporter who asked me about this is excused because we're done with that part.
Yes, thank you for your service this evening, sir. I know it was a long evening. Thank you.
Yeah.
With all of that being said, it seems like a simple amendment here could clear up this language and not disrupt the overall process. I want to get these protections in place. I understand the spirit of your motion to table, but it seems like we have a path forward. I am going to respectfully oppose that motion to table, and I hope other counselors will join me in that.
Mr. Stoltzfus, given the discussion, would you have the opportunity to withdraw your motion to table, or we can vote on the motion and move forward?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So is this provision actually necessary? I mean, aren't these data centers already automatically grandfathered in because they were approved before this zoning ordinance was approved?
Yes.
That's a fair question, yes.
It is a fair question.
The answer
And-
is yes, they are grandfathered.
So can we just remove it?
Yeah, this is unfortunate. I admit I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I do understand the confusion around the language now that I've read it a few times, but I also understand, I think that there is a way to read this without the not as well. I guess I'm looking, Mr. Albert, based on the way the language is written here, do you think that the change of adding the not is the appropriate way to go? I'd just like to make sure substantively that we're on the same page, and then I can circle back to the question about the.
I can't answer that without looking at the community benefits agreement, because I think this is one of the items contained in the community benefits agreement, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
Yes.
I mean, I would be okay with just removing that because it seems redundant. I mean, this is how zoning ordinances work, right? If they're passed after applications have been approved, yeah. So I would recommend to remove
point,
it.
I believe this related simply performance standards rather than anything else in the CBA, if I am correct.
But again, that would have nothing to do with this actual ordinance that we're looking at right now.
Right. I think that is a possible route. I think in our coordination with the solicitor, Mr. Handwerger, I think the intent here was just to make sure that it was clear in both our legislation and through the contract that they were working hand in glove, and so that one was responding to the other. I can't speak to whether this is absolutely necessary. I don't think it is absolutely necessary, but I do think that that was the intent of the solicitor, was to just make it as clear as possible in our legislation to enforce the council decision that was made around the CBA contract.
But I mean, we only have this solicitor here this evening, so Neil, could you weigh in? If we just removed this, is there any impact?
Mr. Albert, may I cut in front of you? Thank you. So it seems like, just for the sake of confusion, or there's a sense of confusion here, and without the solicitor that has been here throughout this process, Council President, I'm going to make a recommendation to council that we do table this ordinance to the next council meeting. I just want to make sure that the language is clear and that council as well as the administration feels confident moving forward with this. And I understand that creates a delay. And with that, we should have brought this with more clarity. So that's, I'll take ownership on that. My apologies.
Mr. Stoltzfus, your motion to table, is that to what date?
To our next council meeting, so it would be July
14th.
Yes.
We do have a motion that has been properly seconded. Is there any more council comments on the motion?
Council President, I would just say that I think with the addition of a simple not there, this would not fully divert the purpose of this, and I would like to get the protection in place, but if the mayor and the rest of council thinks that we should table, I'm happy to go along with that.
Thank you, Councilor Miller. Are there any other council comments on the motion to table? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
On the motion to table, Ms. Gastineau.
Aye.
Ms. Holland-Jones.
Aye.
Ms. Mijan.
Nay.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltzfus.
Aye.
President Ahmed.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. That concludes our legislative agenda. I will hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.